This live presentation was produced in Ashland, Oregon by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. RVML relies on the support of our volunteers, members, and donors to organize and present these programs. For more information about this presentation, or to borrow, download, or purchase other recordings from our catalog, please visit our website at rvml.org.
Put that there, put this here. First of all, I want to thank the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Resource Center for the invite. We've been talking about my coming up for years and years, and finally, here I am. And of course, I want to thank Jordan Peace, great friend, very long-time supporter, wonderful person, and his supporters as well, some of you know. And I also want to thank my gracious hostess, Asha Deliverance, for letting me sleep in her dome last night. I want that dome. It's all I need. $3,500 on a platform, access to somebody's bathroom, and I'm gold. I drove in from the south, and when I came in, I'll try not, I'm going to drop it a little bit, Jordan. It's funny, I had the same exact experience that I had when I drove just a couple days ago into Sonoma, California, which is also a very, very nice place. And the feeling I had, just as I'm kind of driving in, getting into the downtown, is that I wanted to drive under the speed limit. Really, I wanted to slow down and make sure I was under the speed limit. Because, well, first of all, I didn't want to make undue noise to sort of, you know, cause any stress for the town or anything. And then also, I didn't want to create the sense of urgency, rushing around, because it would just seem wrong. And this is true. I'm not making this up. And I did. And I slowed way down and under the speed limit, which is not easy because in a lot of places in Ashland, it's 20 miles an hour, as you probably know. You can't even get a bicycle under 20 miles an hour. But that's just the fact that it's Ashland. I've been here one time briefly. I know how amazing it is. And I should add that you don't get that feeling when you drive into Los Angeles. You don't get it. All right. Okay. First, let me say that I am certainly honored to be able to come and speak in certainly one of the most amazing places on the planet, and speak to what I'm sure is one of the mellowest audiences on the planet. And one of the most enlightened, I should say. Of that I'm quite sure. So I have good news and bad news in that regard. Good news is, I'm pretty sure at the end of the evening you will be, I think, a little more enlightened. The bad news is you may not be as mellow. Now it will fade, right? Just go home, relax, have a little herbal tea, and you'll be fine in the morning. The other thing is that this is a work in progress, and still rough around the edges. Also, it is a presentation which is fundamentally designed for the larger audience, the general public who are, probably you've already guessed, not as enlightened as you are, not as informed, not as on top of things. And they need to be, they need to have the information. So some of you are, I know it, you're in your head tonight a number of times you're going to say, hey, I knew that. I knew that. Yep, I knew that. So be patient. I think there will be a few things in here for you. All right. Also, we will have a break. Hopefully not too late into this. That's the opportunity for you to kind of stretch a little bit, and that's the opportunity for any of you who 20 minutes from now we're going, what am I doing here? And who is this person? And what the hell is he talking about? I thought this was about some archaeological thing happening in the Mayan Peninsula. What's going on? You can leave gracefully at that point without upsetting me. That's your opportunity. Then we'll come back, we'll do some more, and then we'll take Q&A. I didn't realize we were going to be ushered out at 10 o'clock. We could man people at the doors to fight them off and take more Q&A. I'll leave that to you, but I will try to get in as much of that as possible. So, with that in mind, I also want to mention that there will be a couple of commercials tonight. Now, just a couple, not much, just a little bit. One of them is $1 million commercial, but I promise it's just a little bit of that. One other thing I'll mention that over here, I'll do the first commercial. Over here, what I have is I have a lot of videos from some conferences I gave in Washington, D.C. going back 2004. Most of them are fairly recent. And those are, take one if you like it, all right? If you see something you like, take it. I also have a book I'll be talking about a little bit later. That is $35, and I've got 3 of the Fast Walker DVDs at 15. Of course, donations are accepted. Now, given what I've said earlier, and given the wonderful nature of this town, I thought that the appropriate thing to do was to bring this. Disclosure at World's End, Exopolitics 2012. That sounds pretty mellow. And it's very cool. I mean, that is, you got to admit, that is a cool title, all right? That is very cool. The only downside is it's only good for the rest of this year. And I don't think it's going to work in 2013. Of course, it's not going to be a 2013, so I'll just go with this. But there is a connection here. I'm going to make this all come together. And the reason I have to make this all come together is for the last 3 months, I've been trying to talk my way onto a cruise going to the Yucatan in December. It's called the Mayan Galactic Cruise, and it's run by Susan Shrumsky and Robert Quicksilver, and it's kind of a 2012 thing, and if you're a speaker, you get to go for free, and so I've been trying to convince them that I can do a 2012 presentation, right? They're not sure about this, so I have not been ticketed in yet, but I'm working on it, because I want to be, where I want to be on 2012, December 21st, is at sea. As far at sea as possible. This, I'm telling you, is where you want to be. Just trust me on this, all right? So we'll see how that goes. So here's my 2012 thingy, but I am going to connect it all up. So, the world coming to an end. This is a promo from the movie 2012. How many have seen the movie 2012? Okay, decent number. See, a lot of you are thinking, I don't need that, that's okay. This, of course, is the Pacific Ocean coming over the Himalayas. Not a good thing. And this is actually not from the movie, I mean, not actually in the movie, because the Buddhist monk here would have actually been to the right over where that monastery is. But they've kind of done this to get a certain effect. And I like this effect. All right? And I encourage people to consider this approach. In other words, whatever is coming, even the Pacific Ocean. Was that the Pacific Ocean? Yeah, it would have been Indian Ocean, maybe, whatever, it doesn't matter. You want to meet it with calm. There's no reason to get, wild and crazy. Just be calm, see what's happening, face up to it, and it's all good. So I highly recommend calm. Also, I recommend becoming a Buddhist. Buddhists can handle anything, including the Pacific Ocean coming over the Himalayas. Now, the other reason that I have seen personally 2012 10 times. I mean, I really do like that movie. It's almost a little perverse, is that I cannot get enough of watching Los Angeles slide into the Pacific Ocean. And that's exactly what's going on there, all right? I can't, so while I don't want to watch the whole movie, but what I do is whenever it turns up on cable, I kind of cruise in, grab a couple of key spots, and I always make sure I get to see this. This is just way cool. All right. Now, as we know, 2012 primarily is 2012 because of the Mayans, some fine people living down in the Central America on the peninsula there up until about the end of the 9th century, right, when apparently things went badly, all right? They had an economic collapse, did a lot of bailouts, whatever, and they went out of business. And they stopped their calendar at a particular point, which happens to be, according to some, most, December 21st of 2012, thus generating what is really quite a phenomenon. And I'm aware of this phenomena, and I'm not discounting it, paying attention. But I would like to suggest, just for those who are maybe a little skittish about what's coming down the line, that you consider other possibilities, and I'm going to raise one now for you, all right? Now, I'm not a Mayan scholar, but I think you'll find this is quite an academic analysis, if I don't say so myself. It's possible at the end of the 9th century, right around 900, the Mayan elders were there. They knew things were coming pretty much to a close. It was going to be all over. And like the Egyptians who created the massive pyramids, whoever did those, in order to have something that would go deep into the future and that people would know thousands of years later that they were there. The Mayans had done something similar. They created some pyramids, right, that are still there, to their credit. But it's possible that one of the elders said, you know, I know another way that we can let people know down the line that we were here, right? How about, I'm just brainstorming here, how about if we were to end our calendar, say, make it worse, ends our calendar out about a certain amount of time when humans have probably gotten really arrogant, right, and overconfident, and maybe not really taking care of the planet like they should, and we'll have it end about that time. Well, it turns out that a back-tune end in about 1,100 years, I think one of the elders said, that's about right, about another 1,100 years, I'm sure humans are going to be insufferable, right? Probably destroying the planet, what have you. So let's just end it then, and not, say why. In other words, we've been punked by the Mayans. It was a joke sent forward 1,100 years, right? Just to let us know they were there. They had a sense of humor. Now you may say, what? But come on, Steve, where are you getting this from? And what is making you think like that? I would just suggest you consider this, that they made their sunstones. Those sunstones were ubiquitous, and they were picked up by the Toltecs and the Aztecs, and there are many, many of them, right? And they're symbolic, of course, representing the Mayan calendar. And in the middle of these sunstones is the god Tonatiuh, god of heaven. And I should like to point out to you that on every one of these stones, he is sticking out his tongue, right? In other words, joke's on you folks. That's what I think has happened. By the way, that, according to the Mayan scholars, that is in fact not what he's doing, but rather that is him demanding to be fed blood and hearts, right? I like my idea better. Yes, sir.
Just as long as it's right in front of us, everybody please notice that the Mayan calendar is not linear with a beginning and an end. It is circular.
This is true.
It comes around to the beginning.
I totally agree. So, okay, there's your Mayan calendar. Now, the umbrella under which we're going to be talking tonight is exopolitics. This is an exopolitical engagement that we're doing. It's a term that's only been around for 10 years. It hasn't gotten in the dictionary yet, but it will. This is the term that is in the Open Webster dictionary right now. Part of it is on the Wiktionary, right? And I think eventually it will be accepted as a formal definition. The first definition is the key one, and it's the art or science of government is concerned with guiding or influencing governmental policy toward extraterrestrial phenomena, extraterrestrial beings. It's the social political engagement aspects of this phenomena, past, present, and future. It covers a lot of stuff. It's not the science of it. It's not how, specifically the science of how saucers work. Specifically, might be the implications about how saucers work. It's about government actions, it's about possible interaction with ETs, and on and on and on. Exopolitics, which is a subset of political science. Right? That's how we're engaging this. Now, very important, I'm about to dispense with hours and hours of presentation regarding the phenomena prior to 1991 and really prior to today in about 30 seconds. For the era 47 to 91, which was really about UFOs, it was all about lights in the sky. People seeing them, trying to find out what was going on, taking photographs, analyzing the photographs, holding meetings, forming organizations about those things in the sky. Went on and on and on. They did a lot of good work and proved, I think, that there was non-human craft up there no later than 53, right? Of course, the government knew about the existence of non-human craft way before that. And then it went on for 44 more years until the end of the Cold War, at which point things began to change. Initially, it's not just about lights in the sky. We started to take a lot more in. We started to look at it from a slightly different perspective. And by 1997, this is where it was, and this is where it is now. It's not about lights in the sky. It's about lies on the ground. That is what this issue is about now. And in that regard, when I held the 2007 press conference, X conference in Washington, D.C., This is the first time that slogan was put into use. That's on the X-Conference banner, which is hovering above two very good friends of mine, and I think some of you almost certainly know them, and that is Sergio and Gay Lube from Walnut Creek, who are very great supporters of mine. And I just love this photo, so I kind of put it in. It's not about lights in the sky, it's about lies on the ground, and that is the way this has to be resolved. And what do I mean by lies in the ground? I mean there's been a truth embargo since it sort of got underway in 47, solidified by early 53. It used to be called the UFO cover-up. That's not what it was. It was a truth embargo. It wasn't illegal, it was completely legal. And calling it a UFO cover-up essentially offends many of the people inside government who conducted this policy for national security reasons in our best interest. And we don't want to offend those inside who could be helpful to us in resolving the issue. And I'm proud to say that I started introducing this term around 99, I can't remember, and so far it's doing really well, and you constantly see it referred to. Which brings me to this. As I said, it is not a totally mellow presentation here, right? This is a kind of a big deal here. We've all know about it. I was born about 16 months after the bombs were dropped on Japan. So anybody here who is, what's the word I'm looking for, who is younger than 66, I think, and a half, or 66, has lived their entire life with that as an iconic symbol of something, right? And you never got away from it. You still haven't gotten away from it. It's been there. Nothing like it had ever happened before in human history. It was a big deal. And more importantly, we were almost destroyed by this on a number of occasions. One is well known. You know what I'm talking about. There were others not so well known. I guess if we knew all of the times we came close, we probably would be a little less mellow. I thought a lot about this. You know, say, what do you do, Steve? I think a lot about nuclear clouds. That's what I do. It's not good date talk, I'll tell you that. And what I came to conclude, and this is where things start to get interesting, is that this symbol, and the one I'm referring to that really matters, is not the Trinity test, which was done to see if it works in the deserts of Southwest America, but in fact, when they dropped the two bombs on human beings. Those two mark something important. What was that? Right. Essentially, what I believe is that when those two bombs were dropped in Japan, that was the culmination of 10,000 years of human endeavor. Right? In other words, human beings, and you could actually go back 200,000 years, which is when the subset Homo sapiens sapiens sort of got going. But let's just go with the last 10,000 years since the flood or whatever happened back then, and civilization had this long window of development. In that 10,000 years, humans have been heading for that with great intensity, great commitment, and by God, they got there. It represents some very powerful things. It represents, in fact, what I will call the human operating system 1.0, which is essentially the operating system for the subspecies Homo sapiens sapien going back 200,000 years. And that operating system served us fairly well, but it had its problems, like the first Windows op. And after, 10,000 years, we get this. So in a sense, it represents the end of, I believe, that operating system. In other words, it is so powerful that it's come to symbolize the results of 10,000 years of human endeavor, which was driven by men. It was a male-driven operating system. I don't think any women here will deny that. It was based on violence, territorial imperative, territorial acquisition, greed, destruction, and a lot of other things. And throughout that 10,000 years, it has been nothing but war after war after war. And the development of weapons technology. And every time someone would get a breakthrough in weapons technology, they'd go conquer somebody. Whether it was the crossbow or the longbow or gunpowder or whatever, right? A better tank, a better plane, they would go conquer somebody. 10,000 years of that's kind of tough. And so finally, they get the summum bonum. They come up with a weapon that will destroy essentially everything, right? Kind of the end of the game. Where do you go from there, right? You're going to make an even better weapon? Well, you can already destroy everything as it is. And so this is this powerful symbol for the end of that operating system, right? So you see where we're getting here, the end of something? Because what I'm saying is, it's the human operating system 1.0 that's coming to an end this year, not the world. And so I started thinking about that, and I started to wonder, okay, if this is this incredibly powerful symbol that represents the end of this huge human experience, what could be powerful enough to represent the beginning of the next human experience? What could represent now going in another direction? In other words, what could represent the beginning of human operating system 2.0, HOS 2.0? What could that be? Boy, there's not too many candidates. But one thing that came to mind right away is that, in fact, throughout the ages, when you look back at history, you discover that humans have been trying to do that many, many times. Meaning that the vast majority of humans really didn't want to have war after war after war. They didn't want to be oppressed. They didn't want to be enslaved to narcissistic personality, disordered emperors or their crazy sons or whatever. They really wanted to have a life that reflected a lot of the things that you take for granted today. But what could they do? They had no power. So they invariably turned to a concept which has been prevalent for a long time called messianism. Many of you probably know there have been many messiahs, many of them. Most of them never really caught on, and no one knows about them. Only the most intense scholars can talk to you about the other messiahs. But they all had pretty much the same concept, namely that a being, someone, possibly part God, whatever, with great powers will come, and this person will literally change the paradigm, and we will leave this god-awful mess that we're in now, and we're going to go to a better place. There is one example that, of course, did pretty well. It had a pretty good run. The Christ. And when you read, obviously, the testimonies of the Christ, if you read the New Testament, it's not hard to figure out. That's a whole new ballgame. That's not the way the world was running. Right? The fundamental message was, as far as I'm concerned, a whole new operating system, assuming people embraced it. So there you go. Here's your shot. Now, it was kind of difficult because back then there was no internet, right? Things traveled slowly, news traveled slowly. When the Christ was born, nobody knew about it. And throughout all his life, very few people knew what was going on. The rest of the world was absolutely clueless. And finally, after his death, the concept, the ideas spread slowly. It took a good while before the Roman Empire became Christian. One of the problems with that slow development is that within not too long, the message was co-opted. And before you knew it, of course, wars were being waged in the name of Christianity. And that happened with other religions as well, which is not exactly what he had in mind. And so how would you say, the transition to the new operating system did not happen 2,000 years ago. And messianism is pretty much the only thing that humans had. What could be bigger than that? I mean, if Christ, supposedly a son of a deity with extraordinary powers, comes to the earth and is able to do miracles, and he is unable to convince that many people that we need to make some changes here, what could possibly be more powerful than that? And I thought about that a great deal. A very special book, right, that somebody writes that everybody reads and they're totally into it and they go, wow, this is the way to go, and suddenly you see this major transition. Mayo Zedong tried that. The Red Book, everybody had it. They had it with them all the time. They read it all the time. Did it form a transition in the world? No, didn't work. A few other people have tried that with their special book. No, not enough. So what could it be? I believe it is this. Disclosure, all right? Which is, of course, in the title of the presentation. See how I'm tying this together? I'll tell you, I'm a pro. But not small d disclosure, not the revealing of things, the unfolding of information, that happens all the time. But big D disclosure, which is an event, a specific event. It's self-defined by the advocacy movement, so there's no room for error. If some pundit wants to come on and say, well, here's what disclosure is, they say, I'm sorry, we invented it, we created it, we defined it, go away. What is it? It's this. It's actually quite simple. It's the formal acknowledgement by the world's governments of non-human extraterrestrial intelligence engaging the human race. It's not, you know, a bunch of people like yourselves who, many of you know that we're being engaged. That's not it. All right? It's not enough. It's the formal acknowledgement by the world governments. It is the 200 plus sovereign nations and municipalities, whatever you call them, telling the 7 billion people that they have 200 plus social contracts with, that they're not alone in the universe. Not only are they not alone, but they have company. That event is a big deal. It's even bigger, in my opinion, than the nuclear event that marks the end of the last age. And that event is very close at hand, with a very good possibility of happening this year. Which, if it did, makes the Mayans look really, really cool. Now, I happen to think that, you know, and I like Mayans, I love Mayans. I'm saying I want to cruise down there, I want to work with them, I want to talk with them. The point is that I personally believe, I'm not trying to throw oil on this, but I happen to believe that there is no connection between the Mayan calendar and whatever they knew and the fact that disclosure or this acknowledgement could take place this year. I think, in fact, it's one of the greatest, if not the greatest, coincidences in the history of the human experience. It just happened that way, which I love too. Of course, as you know, since you've almost certainly read the Celestine Prophecy, there are no coincidences. So I don't know what to say. But I like the way it's going. So here's the deal. We are all living in the pre-disclosure world, and the pre-disclosure world goes back forever in time, pretty much. I mean, it goes back as far as you want to go, 2 billion years. As far as the Earth is concerned, we live in the pre-disclosure world. And in that world, as I've already stated, going back as far as you want to go, we have operated as a species using Human Operating System 1.0. We're very familiar with it. We know how it works. Right? It's been very consistent for 10,000 years. It had a pretty good run. It accomplished some things, but it no longer works. Really no longer works. All right? It's not like, you know, if we could tweak it a little here and tweak it a little there, we could make it fit in. No, it doesn't work. It's like taking, you know, this computer I have here, which is called, you know, whatever. It's a gaming machine. It's 64-bit. I mean, it could run the space program all over the world. Whatever. It's like taking Windows 1.0 and sticking it in here and make this work. Not a chance. So this doesn't work anymore. And that's the pre-disclosure world. Okay, fine. So pre-disclosure world, post-disclosure world. I hope you like this graphic. I'm extremely pleased with it. I'm not a very artistic person, but you know, I put things together. And the line in between, as you can see, is very thin. Very thin. Because the announcement of the extraterrestrial presence could take 20 seconds. My fellow Americans, I'm here to tell you this evening that we are in fact being engaged by extraterrestrials. We wanted to tell you sooner. We couldn't for national security reasons. Now we can tell you, thank you so much. God bless America, and God bless the United States, or whatever. Done. It's done. We're in the pre-disclosure, post-disclosure world. It's over. No big deal. We can go back to doing whatever we're doing. But look at that, okay, because that line, right, and what is about to happen is as big as it gets. It's all of the Mahdi's that ever showed up. The Buddha, Christ, Confucius, the prophet, all of them put together, multiplied by a number, and now you've got the implications of that line, and guess what? It's on your watch. Okay, you get it. It's your time, right? I don't know how many times you've been incarnated. I don't know how well it went for you in the previous lives, but this is the big one, folks. After this one, you can retire. Just retire your soul. You don't need to come back anymore. So now we're in the post-disclosure world. We're going to talk a lot about that. I'm going to move very fast through the early part because I'm going to be talking about things you already know. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because there is a connection, believe it or not, to ETs and all of the things I'm about to tell you. Right? But I will move very fast. So, what I'm going to be talking about is it conceivable that we could uninstall HOS 1.0 and install HOS 2.0 in a relatively short amount of time and completely changed the course of history for the 21st century, which, if you had noticed, is going down the toilet. All right? Is that even conceivable? Christ couldn't do it. We can do this? No way. Way. All right? I'm going to try to convince you of that here today. All right? First, remember, we're now in the post-disclosure world. All right? And so now we're going to talk about that. By the way, I should point out that one of the key parts of exopolitics, and one of the things that irritates some people about what I do and some of my colleagues does, is that we don't invest time in debating the UFO phenomena and the validity of all that. We're just not interested in doing that. We know that there's an extraterrestrial presence. It's a fact. It's been proven 10 times over. We know the government knows it. We know the government has contained it. We know there's contact going on. And so we're moving forward here. Now, the government would like us to debate lights in the sky until the end of time. I'm not going to do it anymore. We're dealing with the real world. And one of the reasons that these kind of presentations are important is that there's a whole lot of people out there that actually believe what the government is saying on this issue. And so consequently, they're lying on the railway tracks while the disclosure train comes barreling down on them at 100 miles an hour, thinking everything is going to be just fine. No, it's not. So, two things right off the bat that are going to be able to profoundly start moving us to Haas 2.0, or worldview change. Very quickly, every one of you's got a worldview. It's what you get up with in the morning, you go to bed with it at night. You can't function without it, trust me. It's the total collective knowledge that you have, opinions that you have, understandings that you have that allow you to make decisions and get through the day. It's your worldview. It covers politics, religions, basics, how to butter toast, whatever. You got it. The person next to you has a different one. The person back there has a different one. There's 7 billion different worldviews. Now, they do line up a lot, and you have groups of people that have similar worldviews, and then you have groups over here that have a different but similar worldview amongst themselves, and of course, this group will eventually go to war with this group. But the point is that worldview, we all got them. And if you want to change the course of history and humanity, you need to change worldviews, and it is very hard to do. Each worldview is like a small iron filing, 7 billion of them. And if you want to reorientate 7 billion iron filings, even a little bit in some direction, you need a very powerful magnet. It's got to be a big magnet. Otherwise, it's not going to work. You know, people try to change your view. They write a book. They sell 20,000 copies. How many worldviews do you think are changed? Even a massive book, right, like Celestine Prophecy, still only touches a tiny % of the world. So let's talk about the two primary worldview impacts that will come when we are finally told of the extraterrestrial presence. They involve the human race and human space. Now, with that respect, I'm going to refer, and I'm going to do this 5 times. There are a number of, there are dozens and dozens of very important exopolitical questions, which I will be addressing in my book when I finally write it. But don't hold your breath. I've got 5 of the most important tonight that I will talk on just a little bit, we'll touch on. But this will give you a sense of how exopolitically, how you think about these things exopolitically. This is a pretty big one, very big one. Did non-human intelligence, most likely extraterrestrial, manipulate human development in one manner or another during the past 200,000 years? Now, I know that most of you don't watch television. This is wise. I wish I had taken that advice a long time ago. Nevertheless, I will ask this anyway. How many people have seen any of the Ancient Aliens? Okay, not bad. Okay, you watch the History Channel. It's not bad. It's a very powerful show. It's heavily funded. It's the most successful ET-related show of all time. And I think about 30% of it's going to prove true. But it has done more than any other thing in the era of the ET, going back 60 years, to really educate people to the fact that there is an ET connection to our past. And that's a significant thing, and it's helpful for people to start getting used to that, because if disclosure comes, let me tell you, it's going to be even more ancient aliens with even more information. And a lot of it's a little bit, you know, interesting and maybe even difficult to digest. This is a really big deal exopolitically, though. Which brings me to this word, specialization. It's It has many, it's a basic word, it has many definitions, but there is one in biology, for those of you that took biology. And it is, in biology, the adaptation of an organism or a part of an organism to a specific function or condition in response to environmental conditions. Now, I would like to suggest that, in fact, one examples of specialization is this. The organism Homo sapiens sapiens has been dealing with a condition, which is the presence of an engagement by non-human intelligent beings for a very long time. And the evidence is there. It is emerging, and it is very persuasive. What am I saying? I'm saying that extraterrestrials have been engaging human beings and affecting their history in a number of ways, the most profound being DNA manipulation, which we'll get into later. But as you can see, the exopolitical implications of that are pretty profound. And I'm going to suggest that in the post-disclosure world, not too long after disclosure, because it's going to be very intense, you are going to get that confirmed. All right? So if you're uncomfortable with that, you need to, take a breath, do a little meditation, get ready. Now, I have come up with a term that I am going to try to get in the dictionary. Right? This is a good shot. I didn't come up with exopolitics. That was somebody else. I'm going for this term. This will be my truthiness. How many watch the Colbert Report? It's a very important show. You need to watch it a lot. Because he's so powerful guy, he was able to get truthiness into the dictionary as a standard word. I don't know. I think he did in like 8 months. It was the word of the year, I think, in 2006 or 3, whatever. I was very upset because I was hoping exopolitics would get the word of the year. But this one has got to get the word of the year. I have submitted it to Webster's Open Dictionary, and as soon as I can write something with it in it, I will submit it to Wiktionary. It's harder to get into Wiktionary. They're very tough over there. What does it mean? By the way, it is not a word. If you play Scrabble and put that baby down, you're not getting any points. Okay? You with me on that? Here is the definition of specialization. It is the process by which human beings place increasing emphasis on their connection as a member of the same species as opposed to their membership in a myriad of social, political, racial, religious, and other subcategories. All right? Believe it or not, there is not a term for that. Now remember, the two major worldviews changes that we are going to be possibly seeing are involving human race and human space. And of course, right now we're talking about human race. It's a fine race, right? There's a lot of really great people in it. And it's done some good things, done some bad things, right? But if it doesn't have a change of worldview very soon, it's going to create an unlivable situation and a great deal of pain and suffering. If you measure pain and suffering bulk, like at Costco, okay? In other words, if you got 20 people and 2 are suffering, then 10% are suffering, and that's, not good. If you got 7 billion people and 10% are suffering, well, that's 700 million people. That's a lot of suffering. You can probably even feel it if you get quiet. Actually, the number of people suffering in the world is a lot greater than 700 million, I can assure you. And so, this sense of specialization, what does it mean? I mean, there is a certain amount of that. Some of you are you're not alien to this idea. You know what I'm talking about. However, it simply hasn't gone far enough. Specialization simply means that you have a very strong sense of being part of a specific group, namely the human race, and you respect everyone else in your species. Now, why would you do that post-disclosure? Because on the day of disclosure, you will be informed that there are a lot of other species out there, and they're not human, though it's a little more complicated than that, but whatever, we'll get to that later. There's a lot of them, and they got better toys, they got better cars, they're telepathic, whatever. They're pretty hot, okay? You got some very hot species out there. You're going to learn that, and all humans are going to learn that within 24 hours. Some guy working a plow in Bangladesh, his brother-in-law will let him know, who's coming back from the village, he was listening to a radio, he'll know within 24 hours. All 7 billion people know they're not alone. And so There's other species there, so they've got their species, and then we have our species. Them, us, And so now the I would say, comparison that we all do is we have a species and they have a species. All right? That is how that worldview change starts to happen. Now, there will be some people, post-disclosure, still operating in Human Operating System 1.0, that will say, okay, we have the new other. All right, yeah, we're not going to fight amongst ourselves. We have a new group to fight with. And so the way we sort of come together is the enemy is my friend. So we're all friends now, and now we're going to go fight the extraterrestrials. That's 1.0. Somebody will raise their hand and make that suggestion. And if I happen to be in the room, I will gently point out to this individual that us trying to, quote, fight the extraterrestrials is roughly the equivalent of a kindergarten class going to war against a Navy SEAL team. It's not going to work, period. All those movies you see about how we win are fantasy. We don't win. The only way this works out is if they have no interest in having a war with us. And the evidence points to that, thank goodness. So here's another classic example of why 1.0 has got to go. Now, you may say, well, this is kind of okay. This is your crazy stuff, Steve. You know who was unable to get in front of a mic for a number of years without bringing this exact point up? The very fine President, Ronald Reagan, who over and over again kept saying, if we had a threat from outer space, would we not all come together? That is Ronald thinking 1.0 on exactly what is going on right now. I'm actually not criticizing him. I know what he was doing. I think he's a pretty good guy, actually. But that is an example of the president going along with that concept. Now, that's got to stop. And it will. You know why? Because, you don't have to have an other like that. I mean, you don't have to have a threatening other to come together as a species. Having a bunch of others out there and that could very well be the gateway to the galaxy for us, and a whole myriad of unlimited possibilities before us, if we can, in other words, the galaxy lays before us. Now, you can say, okay, great, I'm glad the galaxy is there, but I got an appointment, I got to go down to a pizza parlor and blow myself up. You understand, my brother told me I had to do this. Or, we're working on a missile system, we're thinking about launching it, next week. The galaxy's going to have to wait. Or, the bio-warfare people in some underground facility in Nevada are going, I don't even see the universe anymore. I've been down here for years working on the next bio-weapon. Now, there'll be some of that. But the fact is, most people go, whoa, fantastic. So let's just clean things up down here as fast as possible. Let's get things settled. Let's get it all cool. Let's move on because, wow, the galaxy lays before us. Could that bring people together? You bet it would. That brings us to human space. All right? What's that about? What's the worldview change there? It is Earth, home, focus. This is incredibly trite, but I love that double arrow thing. I found that in the symbols section. I just put that in there. I'm telling you, I've got potential. Now, how important is Earth home focus? Oh, you can't imagine how important it is. Now, look, you all know about this. It really got started with Barbara Ward when she wrote Spaceship Earth back in 1950s. I think it was 56. And then you had Rachel Carson, and it all kind of got going. And we started to think about the Earth as our home and so forth. And all of you, I think, are probably there. And there's been an environmental movement and so forth and so forth and so forth. And that's all wonderful. Except, unfortunately, that between now, the time that Barbara Ward wrote Spaceship Earth, and now we added another 2.75 billion people. And the vast majority of the people on the Earth don't get that. I'm sorry, they don't. And that really kind of affects everything. I mean, you can be recycling your bottles and cans religiously here in Ashland, okay, and feeling good about that, and that is fine, and some other people up the road. But out there in the rest of the planet is billions of people who are not recycling and doing a lot of other things. And trust me, it's coming at us like a giant tsunami of trouble. I could have said something else, but I'm not going to do that. And so, my God, we have got to get, I mean, I don't need to come here and pound on the Ashland population to get them to start thinking about Earth as the planet. No, I don't need to do that. I just got to go help the other 7 billion people do that. How in the hell are we going to do that? But remember, we're in the post-disclosure world. Everybody, a couple of days after that, now knows that not only are we not alone in the universe, but they're actually visiting us. Okay, so what happens immediately? Again, in just the regular person's mind. Okay, there's other life out there, and they're from another planet. That's the bet you make. In other words, you go to Vegas, and they got some bets there on where the ETs come from. You're really feeling lucky. You want to bet on the future. Okay, that's okay. You also want to put some money down on another dimension. You can do that, but you're going to lose your money. Okay, you put it down on another star system. Go with Occam's razor. Take the low odds, but make some money. Don't throw your money away. They're from another star system, and so people can, wow, they got other civilizations, and they have their planet. They have a planet, and we have a planet. Their planet, our planet, and they maybe take better care of their planet than we do. It's just like the neighbors. You got a neighbor up the street, the house looks fantastic. You walk out your backyard and there's rusty cars there, and you're thinking, oh man, I got to do something about that. And so it comes down to that. Their planet, our planet. And you may say that is so trivial. I mean, no, it's not. No, it's not. 7 billion people are going to be saying, they got a planet. They seem to be doing pretty well, traveling the galaxy. Got a lot of great tech. Probably if they all died from air pollution or something, or destroyed the oceans or what have you, probably they wouldn't be able to come and visit us. So maybe we need to clean the planet up. Maybe we need to take care of this one and only home that we have. Now, under Operating System 1.0, there are some people who would raise their hand at this point, using that 1.0 logic, and they would basically say, hey, look, it's okay. Yeah, it's going to get bad, but you have to understand, we've got new tech coming in space stuff, and we'll go live on another planet. We'll go colonize something, Mars, one of the moons of Jupiter, whatever. Okay, and so don't worry about it. That's pretty funny. All right, maybe this way. As far as colonizing other planets, that's way out for us. And when we even have a colony set up, I can tell you the ticket price is going to be brutal, okay? I mean, you got to pay Branson $100,000 to go up in that very flimsy-looking plane. It's going to cost a lot more than that to go up and get a condo in the off-Earth colony, right? And so when that day finally comes, that the 1.0 person doesn't really think about it, he thinks no big deal. Yeah, the Earth is hell on Earth. Again, this is kind of the deal in the movie Wall-E, right? But only a few people are going to go. It'll be a few thousand, maybe tops. Very wealthy, very connected, and the rest are just going to have to stay and deal with the troubles. It's a joke, but it's 1.0 thinking. We're not going anywhere. This is it. If we screw it up, that's it. The aliens don't care, as long as the biosphere remains relatively intact. So, what you're going to start seeing, you're already seeing it now, all right? As more and more people do get this without an extraterrestrial acknowledgement, is you're going to see, and now we are bringing the human race and human space together at this point. Because you see, when you talk about the human race, you're talking about the kids, all right? They're the ones that are going to take over. They're the ones that are going to run the show. They're the ones that are going to be dealing with this. We've had a nice run. It'll be over kind of soon. And so, yeah, we're part of the human race too, but soon we're part of the expired human race. It's about them. And note that there are not a lot of young people here today. There's a reason for that. And obviously, kids don't know what's coming. But the fact is, they're the ones that are going to effectuate the change. They're going to finally carry it through. And so you're going to see these images where you have a child and the globe, the earth, together. There's going to be a lot of them, right? Hugging, too. You're going to see a lot of hugging the earth. Right? I love this. This is great. Sums it all up, doesn't it? This guy is going to be a Haas 2.0 person, Homo sapien. He's not operating under the 1.0 system, unless we don't get rid of it and they recruit him into it later on. You know what I'm saying? And I kind of like this one, though. It should be the adult giving the earth to the child, but that's cool. I like this one. And then this is my favorite. I love this too. You're going to see a lot of this. Post-disclosure, you're going to see a ton of this. Human race, human space. If enough people shift their worldview just a little bit toward the fact is we're going to take care of this planet, we're not going to debate it, we're not going to fight over it for the next 20 years, we're going to do what has to be done, things could get better really, really fast. Because 7 billion people is a pretty substantial staff, you know, for doing a little cleanup. Now, I must note here that I'm giving this presentation, and in 2 days it's Earth Day, April 22. Some of you may have forgotten. It's not the only day that kind of Earth things take place, but it's a day that started back, I think, in 1970. A member of Congress got it going. His name escapes me. I blacked it out, but he started it because he was totally upset about the Santa Barbara oil spill. And so he wanted to do some teach-ins, and they wanted to create a day they could focus around that and so forth, and they picked that day because it was good weather and it didn't correspond with spring break. Because understand, when it comes to, you know, historical processes and macro events, you don't screw around with spring break, okay? Let's just get that straight right now. Understand, wise decision, wise decision. So yeah, Earth Day is coming up. So we're doing what we can. Now, not to be left out, last year, PRG, which is my organization, decided we needed a disclosure day too. And so we created World Disclosure Day, all right? Which is July the 8th. There's been one. You might not have noticed, right? Got a little coverage, but not too much. But it was only the first one. Next July 8 is the second one. And the purpose of World Disclosure Day is exactly the same as Earth Day. It is to give a date that people can coalesce around the concept of disclosure, whether it's here or not, all right? And we're making some progress. We've got about 5,000 endorsements right now. A couple of known people. We're looking for some A-listers, possibly. That would be nice. And there's some projects around that. And I'm encouraging people to consider doing something on July the 8th. Now, the reason that I chose July the 8th had nothing to do with spring break. That date was chosen because that is the day in 1947 when General Roger Ramey held a second press conference, had Jesse Marcel Sr. hold up some remnants of a raw wind weather balloon and state that they didn't find a saucer, it was just a weather balloon, everybody can go home now. What I call the informal beginning of the truth embargo. And that came almost certainly from orders from the president, from President Truman. And so World Disclosure Day is July the 8th to kind of close that circle, right, that Roger Ramey, General Ramey started 65 years ago. And, but there is one caveat there, and that is, and this is cool, I love this. The moment the disclosure takes place, whatever day that is, say it's next month, right, May 22, Disclosure Day will be immediately changed to that. That will take me only 60 seconds because I have massive computer capabilities, and that's it. From that point on, that will be Disclosure Day. And we will be in the post-disclosure world. And there is a book, by the way, about that by Richard Dolan and Bryce Abel called AD After Disclosure. By all means, read it. You'll see a lot of these ideas and a lot more. So World Disclosure Day, July 8th. Just want to let you know about that. Now, let me back up. Now what we're going to get into is this. And I'm going to go fast. And if I go fast enough, we'll be able to break after I rip through this. That's not bad. What I'm going to do now is I'm basically going to say, okay, now, stay with me. We're in the post-disclosure world, and all of us in this room are totally committed to uninstalling HOS 1.0 and replace it with HOS 2.0. Right? And HOS 2.0, we already know, will have a couple of key characteristics. One is that it operates with the components, the billions of people around, with a much different attitude about each other and simply not interested at all in fighting the next idiot's war, right, whatever it is, right, or supporting the creation of even bigger weapons or what have you. It's got that, and a little bit more taking care of each other and what have you, all that kind of nice stuff. And then secondly, it is about taking care of the planet. Now, there is another aspect of this, which I can get back to later, that I kind of glossed over, but let me get back to it. We are the lead sentient species on the planet Earth. Now, I know some of you know some people that you don't feel deserve that moniker, but the fact is we're all the lead sentient species. We're not the only one. There are a few others. I'm quite confident the cetaceans are sentient and self-aware. Dolphins, whales, a few others. So they're important too. And if we could learn to communicate with them, and they are trying, we might learn a few things, but the fact is they happen to live in the ocean, which is cool, but it limits them a little bit, and worse, they don't have any fingers, all right? So they're not going to be able to do, they can't do that much, except have a great time, all right? I mean, let's face it, if we could be a dolphin, you'd think about it, right? You give it some consideration. We, on the other hand, we got the responsibility, because once a biosphere develops a sentient species, very quickly, that species becomes the shepherd to that planet. In other words, it's our job, right, to take care of this planet in a number of interesting ways. And if we took that job seriously, under Operation 2.0, HOS 2.0, there are some things we would definitely be doing, all right? But of course, we're not there yet. We're still in 1.0, and we're not doing those, all right? So what I'm going to do is quickly point out the things that we ought to be doing, and also giving you a quick picture of the current pre-disclosure status on April 20, 2012. And a lot of this you already know. I'm going to move quickly, all right? First item, impact. Now again, I'm talking about big issues. I'm talking about the heavy stuff, not the small little dinky stuff. I mean the really important stuff that has huge implications that we need to deal with. You know, it's like when you prioritize your task. You need to, most people tend to do all the little things first and then finally get to that big thing. But what you're supposed to do is do the big thing first. And yeah, as I read those self-help books, you know, what can I say? So all of these are big things. They're kind of important. Here's number one. It's a no-brainer. Impact. That would be meteors, comets, asteroids, all right? If one of those hits, it's over. That's it. 2 billion years of development of life, certainly more advanced forms of life, all of that, plus 10,000 years of civilization, all of that to do all of this stuff and everything we went through, it's done. So consequently, that would be something you'd want to avoid. Is that a fair guess? I mean, you'd want to definitely pay attention to that. You would want to prevent that if at all possible, because that's kind of, you know, pretty big deal. Impact, right? You've heard about it. Global climate control. Now, when I say global climate control, I'm not talking about weather wars. I'm not talking about changing the weather in some country or making it rain more in Kentucky. I'm talking about global climate control on a very macro level. Right? It's currently vogue because of the global warming debate, which has been somewhere between junior high and infantile, by and large, for the last 15 years. It's actually getting quite insufferable. Here's the deal. Guess what? The Earth cools and warms and has been doing it for a very long time. It's going through a warming period right now. It's probably about to go into a cooling period. Did you know that? Reports are starting to come out. And that's what's really important. Not whether it's CO2 or whether it's not CO2. In fact, it's mostly the sun. The point is that we have these things. And so endless debates about corporations having to cut back on this or cut back on that, and all of the infighting and the attack on the scientists and all that nonsense is almost essentially irrelevant, because the Earth has been doing this for a long time. This is an example of a cooling session, right? As you may notice here, South America has a bit of a problem, all right? It's under ice. Also, most of the Northeast, even down to Washington, Maine, they're screwed, all right? And this is true for Sydney, not good. And there's a whole lot of people that used to be living under that. And so, folks, that can't happen. Now, it did happen. And it was kind of a big deal, and I'm sure some animals were displaced, and even some hominoids, if they existed. But it wasn't a calamity. Now it would be. Again, 7 billion people, a major portion of them living on the coast and what have you. If something like this happens, this is a catastrophe. Billions will die. Whole economies will collapse. This simply can't happen. All right? Okay. What about the other? Global warming, or the rise in the sea level. That's not good either. All right? So you have to look a little closer, but you will notice that the South, not in good shape here. All right? Significant parts of South America, not good. Australia, up in here, and generally all of the coastlines have been flooded in, right, displacing several billion people. This will be, again, a calamity for civilization. So it simply can't happen. Now, well, that's enough for now. I'll come back to that. So that's really the issue. We no longer have the luxury of having those kinds of cycles anymore. We actually have to do something about it. How about coronal mass ejection? How many people have seen the movie Knowing? Right? This is a fantastic movie, but it's definitely a little disturbing. Has one of the best endings of any movie I've ever seen in my life. Nicolas Cage is the actor. Coronal mass ejection. Here's the deal. The sun is capable of putting out a significant amount of matter to virtually destroy our magnetosphere and our protection against cosmic rays, and maybe even more than that. If that were to happen, pretty much it's the ball game. There will be humans living without question, but the overall effect on human society and our advanced systems and so forth would be disastrous. Just about 4 days ago, a very significant coronal mass ejection occurred on the east side of the sun, going away from us. All the news people showed it and laughed, and they say, "Isn't that wonderful?" and so forth, totally clueless. That can't happen, folks. If that happens, we're done. How about this? Nuclear pollution. What can I say? This is a major issue. It's really a big deal. We've got to do something about it. There are thousands of nuclear waste dumps everywhere because they didn't know what to do with it, right? They still don't know what to do with it. Thousands and thousands. This stuff is building up with nowhere to go. The tanks are rotting, the underground facilities are leaking, and, you know, a high school team could probably get in there and blow one of these things up. They were going to put it in Yucca Mountain, which is on an Indian land. They spent several $1 billion preparing Yucca Mountain to maybe take a lot of this waste. It really would only handle a small amount, but it was at least a gesture. And, you know, if you can spend a couple of billion, why not? Unfortunately, when it came time to discuss how they were going to get the nuclear waste there, no state in the United States would even consider allowing it to be trained across their state. And so that is now the most expensive empty condo in the galaxy. And again, what if one of these gets blown up? If 50 pounds of C4 was put into one of these nuclear waste dumps, and they're in cities all over the United States, that city is no longer available for habitat, right? They're going to have to relocate. Could they do that? Not even difficult. And then, of course, there's this. This was Fukushima before. This is Fukushima after. By the way, on the left is reactor 4, which is starting to collapse. And again, it just so happens they stored all the nuclear spent rods about 30 yards from it. So if this thing goes, those rods are going to go, and it's going to get a lot worse. And by the way, it is a lot worse. Some of the worst statements on the net are probably too far, but take about 2/3 of that. This is really, really bad, and in time you'll start to get the idea, and it's really a shame for Japan and for everybody else. But it's about as big a wake-up call as we're going to get. Then there's garbage. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the garbage. All I can say is, all of you that are recycling your bottles and cans and stuff, I admire that, but it isn't going to make a damn bit of difference at all. Right now, there is a tsunami. By the way, right now, there is, as you know, billions of pounds of debris from Japan heading directly towards Oregon. All right? And it'll be here soon. And it's not the worst thing in the world. Imagine, now take that billions of tons of the stuff from Japan floating this way. Now, raise it up. Now, so it's about, I don't know, 300-400 feet high, and make it a tsunami of stuff. That's garbage on the planet Earth now. We are creating it. It is a massive tsunami of garbage that we don't know what to do with. That's kind of awkward. And so we build landfills, and some states have already run out of landfill space, and they're renting landfill space from a state next door, and that's here. And this is going on all over the world. Garbage is actually a really big problem. But we're not going to be told that. We're told, recycle, everything will be okay. This is what the government does about everything. Do this, everything will be okay. Do that, everything will be okay. And they're not going to tell you about anything really bad or the financial issues. It'll all be okay, until it, of course, collapses. That's the way the government's been treating us for pretty much the last 60 years, and of course it's leading to disaster. Then the destruction of the oceans. Every year about 15,000 of these containers fall off these boats. Also, these boats use the most polluting fuel known to man. And of course what is happening is all of the ocean gyres, these are gyres, and what these are circular current areas. So like if you're sailing, you grab the top gyre, when you're coming back you get the bottom. That's all very good, but the thing is the way these gyres work is they bring stuff into the middle. And what they have done is they're collecting huge amounts of garbage that we're taking, and they've created the Pacific garbage patches. In fact, it's more than that. There's 5 of them. We are literally creating a massive continent of floating garbage in the oceans, which ultimately could destroy them right now, right, in spite of all that recycling. These are 2 of the biggest, the eastern rubbish patch near Japan, and of course the western rubbish patch. That's a pretty big deal, all right? As shepherds to the planet under Haas 2.0, we should be addressing that. Orbital junk. Well, you know, we're not just polluting the land and the ocean, the rivers and the sky, we're also polluting space. Apparently nobody thought this through, but essentially now we've got 1 million or so pieces of junk up there flying around, and if any one of them hits one of Richard Branson's spaceships, that's the ball game, and he'll probably have to drop his prices. And it's just getting worse. And at this moment, I take a slight digression in order to talk about something that is just so cool. I always have to talk about it. And it is, and the reason it's important is that it is a perfect example of Haas 1.0, okay? I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. If you say, well, Steve, what's Human Operating System 1.0 about? And I'll say, let me tell you about this, okay? Here's the deal. Back in, let's see, I may get the dates right, hopefully. Yeah, back in February, oh, I'm sorry, this is a story about space junk. There's plenty of stuff out there, and they always kind of show these pictures. Isn't that attractive? I mean, you've seen the Earth, okay? Now, here's another representation of where the space junk has been highlighted. It loses a certain amount of its charisma. I see feng shui problems there for sure, all right? So here's the thing I want to talk to you about. This is back in, hang on, let me see if I can get a date on this. Oh yeah, this is February 2011. What happened was, prior to February 2011, I think this was like maybe late 2010, whatever, China, in order to kind of let the United States know that it's a power, it's a space power and all that, China sent a rocket up and blew up one of its own satellites. Right? Just sort of say, hey, we can blow up a satellite, so like, just keep that in mind. And of course, that just spread thousands of pieces of satellite junk into the whatever, and it all has to be tracked. Every one of these pieces has to be tracked by these massive supercomputers. That's kind of a Haas 1.0 act, in my opinion. Now, the United States, of course, noted this. The United States thought about it, could have protested to the UN, could have sent a diplomatic reproachment, any number of things. But the United States finally decided there's only one way to respond to that. We sent a rocket up and blew up one of our satellites. That's Haas 1.0, folks, to the max, spreading more junk into space, okay? So God knows, I hope they don't blow up Beijing. You know, say, look, we're so powerful, we can blow up our capital, right? We just dropped a nuke on our own capital. What do you think of that? And the guys are going, yeah, they blew up a capital. Okay. And they look at each other and say, you know, the damn thing doesn't work anymore anyway. Let's nuke the damn thing. Okay. Fossil fuel pollution. It's kind of a big deal, right? We all know gas, oil, coal. We know what's going on there. It is a huge, huge problem, and in Haas 2.0, you need to solve that problem. In 1.0, no, you don't. You just keep riding that train, all right? $100 a barrel, $200 a barrel, $8 gas, whatever. You got oil executives retiring with $2 billion, $3 billion, $5 billion. They're building houses on the moon, whatever. That's 1.0. 2.0, oh, got to fix that. There are approximately 3 million deaths per year from pollution, most of which is from fossil fuels. That's worldwide. Now, that's not a huge number, but over 10 years, it's 30 million. That's kind of a lot of, you know, grieving families. Then there's the energy cost of fossil fuel. A lot of people don't think about that. When fossil fuel goes up in price, the consequences are enormous because everything costs money, and energy is part of everything, and if energy costs go up, the cost of everything else goes up. Food, water, you name it, medical care. See how I'm doing here? Oh yeah, we're approaching break. Now, it's approximately 10 million child deaths per year, and there is a connection to the cost of energy. Now let me restate that. This is a Haas 1.0 statement, all right? This is not a debatable statement here. This is heavily documented by the World Health Organization year to year to year. Every year, approximately 10 million children under the age of 16 die because they can't get enough food, water, or medical care. And as a result, they are vulnerable to diseases and they die. That is 10 million a year, 25,000 a day. All right? It is a number so grotesque that I can appreciate why nobody really wants to think about it. But that's exactly what's happening. And so over 10 years, over the last decade, that's 100 million children. If I'm an extraterrestrial and I saw that, I would arrest every parent on the planet, take their children away, and remove them to a safe planet where they could grow up and be healthy adults. 5 million adults per year are also being affected by the cost of energy and dying. Not all of that is energy cost, but a significant portion of that 5 million. So there's your cost of energy when you get it from fossil fuels, and then there's water. Water is, in fact, probably the most serious problem in terms of the environment that we have. It turns out we're going to run out of it, and if you study the reports, and I don't suggest you do that unless you're really feeling in a somewhat masochistic frame of mind, whether it's CIA reports, MOD reports, or Club of Rome and any of the others, we're not going to have enough water. And once we start to run out, the cost of water is going to skyrocket, and the effect on the underdeveloped world is going to be beyond imagination. And of course, it's assumed, particularly by the MOD, there are going to be massive wars over water access. And so the thing that is most likely to drive wars in the 21st century, believe it or not, is not religion or oil, right? Going to get oil. It's going to be water. Because, you know, oil is something you really need, but water you really need. Haven't dealt with that? 1.0. Economic collapse. You may be aware that we're kind of in an economic collapse. Now, I know it's looking like a little better right now, but I'm talking about the globe, all right? The abuse of the economic system is vast. They haven't corrected anything. You haven't been told the truth about the total picture. Nothing new about that. We've got a major economic collapse, which would affect huge numbers of people, cause all kinds of suffering. And so that would be a very important matter that you would want to deal with, okay? And then I saved this one for last. It is slightly not related, though it is kind of related, but I love it. You know, this is kind of, I just love this. I just have to do it, so forgive me. And this is the last one in terms of big things that could ruin the 21st century. Supervolcanoes. Now, there are a few of them around the world. It turns out the largest one of all is just east of us in Wyoming, all right? It's Yellowstone National Park. Now, here's the deal, all right? What we have here, and the reason why this is what it is because there is a huge magma chamber there, vast, and it's shallow. It's not deep enough, all right? And so what happens is it fills up, and at some point it blows, but it's really big. So when it blows, it's called a mega volcano, all right? Okay. Now, it turns out that we know a lot about this volcano because of archaeology and a lot of the new technology we have. And what we have learned is this. You see these are calderas here. And you see them lined up like this? There is Yellowstone right there. This is important because what happens is that the magma chamber stays put, right? It's not part of the crust. It stays put. And the crust moves over it. And the crust moves very slow. And so the crust moves over a period of time and it blows. And then it moves again and it blows. And then it moves again and it blows. And because they know just pretty much how fast the crust is moving, they are able to show that the average time between these blows is 300,000 years. Okay, that's cool. 300,000 years, not much to worry about, except that we're 60,000 years late on the last one. It's been 360,000 years. So what happens if it blows? You saw I asked some people, a few people saw 2012. Okay, here's the deal. If you watch 2012, it is a very good representation of exactly what would happen. Maybe a little understated, but pretty much along that. If that volcano blows, it is the end of the United States. There's really no United States. It will take decades, many, many decades for it to even get back to a semblance of what you call stability. We would be a third world nation overnight. The rest of the world might take some joy in that, but unfortunately that mega volcano will in fact, as it has before, cause major problems worldwide. It will plunge the world into a fairly protracted winter. It will freeze all the food. It will kill off huge amounts of animals. It will destroy economies around the world, and by the time it's done, man, you don't want to be around. That can't happen, right? And so if you're the shepherd of the planet, you want to make damn sure that that doesn't happen. So there you go. That is a sense of what we would want to deal with if we were truly shepherds of the planet and we were able to use our skills and our technology. That's the stuff we should deal with. Now, I would invite you to listen to the next several hundred campaign debates in the current presidential election, and how many more there are. I've seen, I think, 47, right? It's still neck and neck. They just did a poll, CNN. Romney would get 46% in November, and Obama would get 46%, and the other 8% said they will hang themselves before the election. So listen to those debates and see if any of the candidates mention any of this at all. I don't think so. There will be a great deal of talk about Seamus the dog and his ride on the top of the car. Going to be a huge amount of talk about that. And let's face it, you know, using a dog on the top of a car is a big deal, and I think it was wrong, and I'm sure it's worth at least another 1,000,000 words. All right, let me see if this is a good time to break. We're sitting at 1:23. I've been up 8 minutes. You know, I think this is a good time to break. I just kind of ran through, right? This is what ought to be dealt with. And now, when you come back from the break, I am actually going to show you how all of those things could be dealt with and fixed under 10 years from today. All of them. Now that's taking care of the planet. Would you not agree? All of them. That's what we're going to talk about when you get back. Take 10 minutes, folks. Even before the war. There's evidence for almost 75 crashes, though many of those are probably not crashes. But there's some evidence for as many as 75. How many there have been, don't know for sure, 5, 10, 8, 12, but they've had these vehicles in their hands, and I can guarantee you they have spent billions of dollars to study every square inch of those craft to learn everything they can. These facilities are always almost every case underground, certainly now. They have top scientists down there. They're under extreme security. They spend any amount of money they want, and they have studied these craft. There is significant evidence that they already have their own anti-gravitic saucers. They have their own saucers. We're flying around our own saucers. There is less understanding, a sense of how much they've learned from the other major technology, which is the energy technology. All right? But I have a sense, my belief is they know a great deal, and that is a really big issue. So that is a thing that has to be answered. There's a number of people out there studying this a lot. We learn a little bit more every year. We will learn the rest post-disclosure. But with that in mind, now we go forward. ET technology, right? The saucers. They don't fly on oil, gas, or coal. You can be sure of that. And they are anti-gravitic. Right? They can hover in place. No blades, right? No jet shooting out the back. They are able to manipulate gravity. This is pretty much how they travel, right? That's pretty substantial right there. Those are two technologies that could transform our society and our planet. The anti-gravitic propulsion I've just mentioned, right? And then the other is the energy. And I have here this slide, and it says 0-point energy, and I want to caution you here. There are a number of names for the potential energy source that we think they're using. 0 point is one of them. It's not an official name. It's not established, I think, as a scientific base, because again, the science on this is pretty much sequestered. There is some science going on, though, in the public arena. There's no question about that. We are studying this technology, but no, it hasn't been assigned a particular name. Ground states and so forth. But for purposes of our discussion, we'll call it 0 point. But here is what you need to know, right? Most everybody now knows that mass is energy, and there's a lot of energy in mass. They understand that, though it's a little hard to fully get, I think, even those that have known about it for years. This podium, right, and this podium, right? If we converted all the energy in this podium here and this, it would blow up blow up this town and a good deal of Southern Oregon. It would be a major bomb, unbelievable. Many, many times the Hiroshima bomb, maybe 100,000. Wait a minute, you said there's 1,000 Hiroshima bombs in here? I mean, a lot of people go, what? I don't understand it. Well, the energy is congealed. We learned how to get a little of it out under special circumstances, but it's theoretically possible to convert it all into energy, in which case you blow up Southern Oregon. Okay, a lot of people go, okay, I get it. But then they really have trouble with this one. And of course, our own science is kind of confirming this. I mean, our own physics is confirming this now. What is it that I'm referring to? It turns out that there is energy in the space around us. It is loaded with it, right? And if you could use it, if you could coalesce it and blow it up, it would blow up Oregon too. Well, that can't be. I mean, let's face it, that is tough. What can I say? Quantum mechanics. You want to drive yourself crazy? Read about that. The energy is all around us in space, and it is large. One way to refer to it is 0 point. Whatever, doesn't matter. Now, what if we could tap into it? What if we had a sufficient technology that we could tap into the energy of space? Holy mackerel, you can't imagine. Well, I'm going to try to help you imagine what that means. So, with that, let's talk about impact, right? That is trivial. If you've got anti-gravitic propulsion, anytime an object turns up, even if it's a blindside job coming out of the southern hemisphere, underneath the solar plane, maybe you only got 2 days or even a day, no problem. You take your anti-gravitic craft up there, and there's, obviously you can maneuver at will, and there's any number of means you could use to redirect that body. You only have to change it a little bit, and it misses the planet. So as long as you have anti-gravitic propulsion, no worries ever again about an impact, unless a dwarf star came in. That could be a problem, okay? In which case, it's been a nice life. Now, it's very possible that our government, which has, I believe, these craft, already knows this and knows that, hey, if something comes in, we'll take care of it. But of course, they can't tell you that because that would end the truth embargo, and they're not ready to end the truth embargo. And so we get to watch our movies, Deep Impact, Armageddon, and a dozen other meteor impact movies. There's been a bunch of them, and worry about this, when in fact there's maybe no problem. Some people think, well, the ETs would take care of it. It's very possible. ETs could easily redirect any object that isn't huge and save us. Maybe they have. Maybe we've already been saved from a number of impacts, but that's not something I'm going to count on, and I don't encourage anybody to do that. We need to take care of it ourselves, and we don't know if the U.S. government is doing this, but if they aren't, they're really stupid. All right. So, impact, not a critical thing. Probably we're going to be fine there. This is another problem altogether. Global changes of this type. We cannot have another one of these. It cannot happen. And the recent report that just came out, you're going to love this, says what I believe to be pretty close to the truth, that the warming spell that we're going through right now is primarily sun-driven. We're going through a sun high-energy cycle, and that's really what's doing the warming. It's also warming up other parts of the solar system, which is a good tip-off there. And that the carbon dioxide thing has made some contributions, but it's not nearly as important as the sun. And They believe that that warming sun cycle is about to end in the next couple of years, 2013, in which case it goes into a diminishing cycle. And when it does that, the planet cools off. And if it cools off enough, you get that. Except that all that carbon dioxide we've been created will help to mitigate the cooling cycle, keep us a little warmer so we stay, you know, kind of in a safe zone. Is that irony? Do you love that? Isn't that great? But the politicians are not going to pay attention to that. They're going to beat the crap out of each other over the issue in order to get elected and not do anything about it. So if you're the shepherd of the planet and you're operating in the Haas 2.0 system, is there a way to solve this problem? Because we just can't afford this anymore unless we want to, you know, go through the pain and suffering of losing most of our population and most of our infrastructure, which seems to be a waste, you know. It's actually not a big deal. You know how you fix this? All you have to do is go out in the proper orbit, right? And you put up solar panels. Or solar shields, they're called. They're actually making these. They're making these. And you put up as many as you want until you have blocked from the Earth a small percentage of the sun's rays, the energy from the sun. And by doing that, you obviously cool the planet down. So, if you have a warming trend, you cool it down by blocking a little bit of the sun. Now, what happens if you go into a cooling trend? You don't want an ice age, what do? You simply use the same panels and you reorientate them so instead of just blocking the sun's energy, it reflects from the side a little extra. It's the, you know, it's what you did when you were younger with the sunscreens on the face. You know what I'm talking about, right? Solar temperature control, it's done. Except one problem. You got to get those solar shields out there, right? Shuttles couldn't do that, right? Would cost a lot of money. On the other hand, if you had anti-gravitic propulsion, right? No problem. You could take shields out all day long. Put them up. End of global warming, end of global cooling. Now, you don't want to get carried away and start getting specific. You're just trying to control the average ambient temperature of the Earth, not make hurricanes hit Beijing. Problem solved. No more anxiety, no more endless debates over global warming, no more, angst over having to destroy corporate profits and blah, blah, blah. All done. And easily. Coronal mass ejection. Talked about that. Same thing. Solar shields. You put your solar shields out there, right? And if there is a coronal mass ejection of size, obviously they're going to help protect from much of the effect and reduce the impact so that it doesn't overly damage our magnetosphere and other protections that we have. Now, a big enough one could blow it all out, but you could still add substantial protection so that, two solutions in one. No problem. But you need anti-gravitic propulsion operating. And let me tell you, there is no way the US government has enough craft now, and if they did and they were trying to take those shields out there, it would risk the truth embargo. So they're not going to do that. Right? So we'll continue with the global warming thing, and maybe after disclosure they'll talk about this, but now, no, can't do that. They're bound up by the truth embargo. So we have to go through all this nonsense because they can't end the truth embargo. Same thing, solar shielding. Nuclear risks. Okay? A little bit about that. We have thousands and thousands of these dumps. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Oh Lord. We can fix it in 12 months. Why? Simple. You have anti-gravitic propulsion. You build, this is kind of a schlocky example, but you build, you know those barges that sail up and down the Mississippi? You build an anti-gravitic barge. You fill it up with 1 billion pounds of nuclear waste. You put it in orbit and you shoot it into the sun, and the sun goes, done. And you go get some more, and you do that. You get some more, and you do that until it's all gone. No problem. We have to, but they're not going to do that because in order to do that, they have to end the truth embargo. And so we have to live with thousands of nuclear waste dumps while they decide whether you can handle the truth of not being alone anymore. 12 months, nuclear waste gone. Oh, well, 12 months from the point that they're able to build the barges, right? And my guess is they could move pretty fast with the proper incentive. No problem. And then the other aspect of nuclear energy, namely, more Fukushimas, zero-point energy. If this energy is as good as we think it is, it will completely replace nuclear and fossil fuels, and it could easily do it in less than 10 years. Now we're really getting into the heavy stuff at that point. Take every major technological kind of paradigm change, the steam engine, right? The oil, drilling for oil, I don't know, the wheel, whatever the hell. Take them all. They're not as important as this, all put together. This is the ultimate paradigm change. It virtually marks almost like a transcendence of the human race, where suddenly things that no one in all of history thought could be done, and not that difficult. And why you say, well, we don't deserve that. Humans deserve to suffer. It's our lot in life. The idea of having ample energy and being able to do what we want at very low cost, that's wrong. My religion tells me is that we need to suffer. We need to suffer for our Lord or for whatever, for our bad karma. And so I'm sorry, I can't accept that. Now, there's no law in the universe that says we can't have that. No law whatsoever. The only reason we have the tech we have is that we discovered it. Discover that, you get all the benefits. Energy everywhere. And Chevron can't control any of it. Though they'll still invest in the post-disclosure world and be rich. And so that replaces the nuclear power. No problem. Garbage. Interesting. What are we going to do about the tsunami of garbage? Guess what? If you took all of the garbage on the planet and you put it in one big pile, you wouldn't want to be anywhere near that pile. And then you somehow were able to take it up into orbit and throw it at the sun would turn it all into gases and a few light metals in about a minute or 2 minutes. It's all gone. So you're saying, okay, great. Like the nuclear waste, we'll take the garbage up and we'll shoot it in the sun. No can do, okay? Not enough saucers. Costs too much money. The amount of garbage we have is many thousands and hundreds of thousands of times greater than the amount of nuclear waste we have. It's not going to work. What are we going to do? Well, create a sun on Earth and burn it here, okay? Basically, how would you do that, right? How would you create a waste incinerator that could burn garbage literally to the point where it's constituent gases and you could recycle that and everything is fine? I mean, all garbage. Steel needles and razor blades, glass, anything. You build an incinerator hot enough. They actually do this. Limited, very limited fashion, particularly to burn off like nuclear stuff from hospitals and things. Why aren't we doing that? You want to know why we're not able to burn all our garbage, end up, empty all the landfills, stop polluting the Pacific Ocean? The cost of energy is too high to get the heat up to where we need it, and so it's physically impossible. And so the oil companies, by managing to find a way to get oil to $100 a barrel and that kind of cost, have basically eliminated the ability to get rid of our own garbage. Which is why we should collect all the garbage and go put it on the lawn of every oil executive in the country. Let them deal with it. But zero-point energy, or something like it, is available. We will be able to create vast furnaces, take them up to 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 degrees, whatever is necessary, and just shove the garbage in there until it's all gone. Again, they do it, but very limited because you got to have the cost factor. Right. Again, the cost ratio would not work for massive global scale. But in certain communities, it does work. In other words, you've got the bucks. Hey, you can get rid of the garbage, but the rest of the world doesn't have the bucks. So the first world does this, makes the incinerators, cleans up all the garbage. Could probably do it in 3 years. No more garbage on the planet. Think about that. And you don't have to recycle anymore. You just stick it in a can, and they put it in a truck, and they take it to the incinerator, and they burn it. And the gases don't go in the community. They're siphoned off and recycled. Man, every town is an Ashland, right? It's fantastic. But we can't do that because, you see, if we were to let people know about this potential energy or know how far we've developed it, we'd have to tell them about the ETs, and we can't do that. So you're just going to have to keep recycling and filling up those landfills. And of course, that gets us to the garbage patch. Now, one of the reasons we have these garbage patches is because we can't contain the garbage on land, and it's going into the ocean in huge amounts. What are we going to do about that? This is a tough one here. Not a problem. What do you do? Anti-gravitic propulsion. With anti-gravitic propulsion, which remember affects gravity, you could build skimming ships that were 2 miles wide. All right? They would be a 2-mile wide version of the right whale, which cruises around and filters plankton through its filters, whatever you want to call it. We could build 2-mile wide skimming ships, and they would just cruise back and forth across the Pacific, skimming down, 20, 30, 40 feet, and collecting all of the crap. Then they would sail back and then throw it into the incinerators and burn it. And in a fairly short amount of time, we've cleaned up the Pacific Ocean. But you have to have anti-gravitic propulsion to do this. You can't make a ship that large that's, quote, going to float. Of course, it would cost a fortune. Anti-gravitic, no problem. So it's partially submerged, but again, because you're dealing with gravity, and the saucers can do that. They fly in and out of water at will. Skim the oceans, problem solved. Space junk, anti-gravitic propulsion. You take up craft that have magnets on them. You move into position with various junk, turn the magnets on, boom, slap it right in, come on down with a whole load of space junk, recycle it. The cost of metals is now so high, you can make a good penny doing that. Wouldn't be difficult at all. Of course, can't do that, but that problem would be solved in no time. You could also go up and stick it, but mostly you'd be using magnets. Position, turn it on, boom, take it, move to the next one, boom, take it, come on back down. Anti-gravitic propulsion makes it possible to clean up space. Richard Branson should be paying attention to that. Richard needs to start thinking outside the box. He is playing their game, and I think it's going to lead to a bad end. And then, of course, you've got the fundamental issue of oil, gas, and coal pollution. And gasoline particularly. If you know how many additives are in gasoline and you know how many of them are bad for you, right? It's not good. All that goes away. I think it'll be about a 10-year transition. They build energy plants, right? Using ground state energy, clean, non-polluting. This goes away. 10-year transition, price comes down very quickly. The moment people start to figure it out, that will ease the burden in the world, right? As they try to get some money for the last bits of oil or whatever that are going to be sold before the transition. And then we're in a new world. I think it could take about 10 years, right? And that's going to be a result of that energy coming forward. And another example of this, one I particularly like, and to make this point, is that the future of the 21st century, assuming it goes the way it's supposed to, is cheap electrons. It's not hydrogen, right? It's not water engines. It's cheap electrons. Why? Because we have huge electron delivery systems out there, massive. And so with that, if you've got incredibly highly effective energy systems using new technology, you use that to generate cheap electrons. And in fact, so cheap that once you load up your car with those electrons, you go out and drive, you might be paying a couple of pennies a mile. How about that? All right, because they'd be that cheap. The other thing we need to do is to apply some technology to reduce the amount of loss of energy that happens to electrons as they go through all those wires. In fact, we have that technology, we just haven't bothered to install it. Because, and nobody's worried about energy, are they? Haas 1.0. And so I could go on and on, but let's just say that an energy breakthrough that dropped the price of energy by 85, 90, 95, 98% could transform the human race and this planet in less than 10 years. It would be beyond anything you can imagine. Now, there would be people that would be saying, okay, look, yeah, it's cheap, but let's find a way to jack the price up, because I need to build a $50 million mansion, in southern Spain or whatever the hell. And in Haas 2.0, we tell that person to go find a home somewhere and get out of our way. Sure, they'll try to do that, but I believe in the post-disclosure world, people are simply not going to allow it. Cheap energy, cheap food, cheap water, cheap everything, and then all of the money, the trillions of dollars it's spent to pay these fossil fuel companies for what they're giving us is available for something else. Think of the things we could do with those trillions of dollars. 10 years. We just need that energy system. And if the government hasn't quite got it perfected, then I would suggest that if they make it available to the other 7 billion people, many of which are rather smart, that the total intellectual power of the human race might just speed up the development process. Because right now it's a bunch of highly focused military intelligence engineers down there who are primarily looking at it from the point is how much of a better weapon can we make? Not how fast can we get cheap electrons to the human race. But we can't get at it at this point. It's not available. And of course, the deaths, the cost of energy, millions of people's lives will be saved. And then there's water. I love this one. And I'm telling you, you read the reports, it's pretty clear. Oh yeah, there's some tricks out there and people are looking at this and people are looking at that, but according to the people that know, it ain't gonna happen and all hell's gonna break loose. So what do we do about water? How hard would it be to fix that? Well, you may be aware of the fact that there's a great deal of water on the planet. Unfortunately, it's salt water, but there's actually quite a bit of it. It's actually not just west of here, quite a bit of water. But we can't drink it. What if we could convert it to fresh water? Well, yeah, the way you do that is desalinization. They're building a plant now down in San Diego, state of the art. It's going to provide wonderful water to some very rich San Diegans, and they're going to pay top dollar for it, but it's all good. Well, unfortunately, that's just San Diego. What about the other 7 billion? Well, you can desalinize seawater all day long, but unfortunately, it's a heat-dependent process. And so for the very same reason we can't burn our garbage, because the energy people have jacked the prices up, we cannot afford to desalinize water at a rate that works financially. You drop the price of energy 80, 90, 95%, you can build desalinization plants all over the world, right off the coast. I don't care where it is. Africa, middle of deserts, doesn't matter. If you can pipe the water in, convert it, they have all the fresh water they want. All day long. Millions of people's lives are saved. You can then make huge amounts of land arable. That makes more food, right? No problem. You just need cheap energy. But we can't have cheap energy because the truth embargo requires that they keep all of that secret until we have, I guess, the right to know. And now this is stuff that's not, I'm pulling out of the air here. This is simple math and physics. This is not even complicated, right? We need to know exactly what they know about the energy systems of those craft. And every day that they don't tell us, a human price is being paid that is becoming astronomical, which means that they're committing a kind of genocide against us so they can keep their secrets and their secret toys. This is serious business. You talk about the people that are being affected and the consequences, it's beyond anything that's in the current presidential campaign. And there isn't a single candidate out there that even remotely has the guts to even open his mouth and say the word extraterrestrial. 0 point energy. And then there's business. Remember I talked about the economic crisis is collapsing? Do you have any idea what the impact would be economically, again, if we were able to have a major energy breakthrough? And I'll even throw in antigravitic propulsion here. It would create the greatest technological explosion in all of history. It would make possible endless thousands of new business models that weren't possible because the spreadsheet didn't work, but with cheap energy and maybe antigravitic propulsion, business model, no problem, let's start hiring. Plus, again, all the money that's freed up from not having to pay trillions for fossil fuels is now available to start companies, start businesses. In 5 or 10 years, we could have 1% employment. We could be hiring everybody you can imagine. That kind of thing has happened before. But this would be on a much grander scale. Economic problem, solved. 10 years. We will wail and we will scream and the politicians will just go, they're blue in the face about jobs, and they're all lying. They really can't do much. But would they actually confront this issue and start doing what they have to do to make this transition? No. Back to the energy again. And as far as this one is concerned, this is a combination. Antigravitics could play a role, and of course powerful energy source could play a role, but the other thing that would play a role is the technology they've been using to dig out their underground bases for the last 60 years. You cannot imagine the stuff that they have built underground. Staggering. They have machines that can carve out massive tunnels like cutting through butter. That's a little over the top, but you get my point. We don't even know what's down there, but the research keeps finding more stuff, and I'm going to say just multiply that by 100. Underground is great. No press, no people, easy to keep secrets, blah, blah, blah. There's an underground world down there. So if we could if they would take a moment and consider that they can't afford that volcano to erupt, they could use some of that technology. And what you do is you bore down into here, right? You bore down into here and you create some chambers down lower, right? And then you go up here and you start to bleed that magma off into these lower chambers. So what you end up with a magma chamber down here and not so high up. And if you want, you could start filling that in, if you want, with certain basic basalt and what have you, that you could get from any number of sources that you would, of course, deliver to the site using anti-gravitic massive craft barges. Boom! Now, maybe it might not be an infinite solution, but it might buy you 5, 10, 15,000 years, right? What can I say? They have no interest in doing that now. Maybe in HOSP 2.0 they would. I want to mention right here very quickly, this is I did one ad pitch, my second ad pitch. For the last 8 months, I have been down in, 10 months out of 12 months, in Los Angeles trying to launch a documentary. This documentary would be about disclosure and exopolitics in a very specific way. It could be a breakthrough documentary. It has the potential to be the first theatrical distributed documentary on this subject. I am partnered up with a company called Just Cause Productions, which is a special effects 3D television. They are able to provide the entire production side of it, including 3D filming, 2D filming, interviews, post-production, and CGI. It's a joint effort. We're trying to find the money to do this. It is a $1,060,000 project. The budgets are all done. This doc and the content of it that I can't get into literally has the potential to end the truth embargo. It is very much in the vein of some other documentaries that have done very well. And they've done very well because, one, they were about very big issues, very important issues, all right? And the most notable is Fahrenheit 9/11, which is the most successful documentary ever, quite a bit of money. The issue there was the 2006 election. And then Inconvenient Truth, which did $40 million. Of course, the big issue there was global warming. That's not as simple as the movie made it, but nevertheless, it got across an interesting idea, and I think they meant well. Not going to criticize them. And it actually won, Al Gore a Nobel Peace Prize. Pretty powerful, big issue. This documentary is about an issue every bit as big as those. So if someone would like to make a little history or know somebody would like to make a little history, we'd like to talk to them so we can get this thing done. Once we have the funding, we can have the initial event that is tied to done and the doc out within 6 months. We did the break. Now we go to religion, very quickly. One of the most important exopolitical questions that comes up, because the government has pounded on this a lot, is, will disclosure bring about a collapse of religions? No, it won't. That's a bunch of baloney the government's been putting out to keep people in line, to keep them away from the issue, to keep people inside from going and talking to the New York Times. It's nonsense. It's insulting. Religious membership will go up post-disclosure. This was nicely represented in that new version of V that was on television, the television you all don't watch much. But in that V where the ETs come down, they're actually hidden reptiles, and David Icke loved that. And they come down and they're giving out lots of tech and medicine and stuff, and it turns out they really want to take over. But in the very first the pilot, right, they come down, and there's a couple of segments, and there's one segment you got a priest and his assistant priest, and they've got this little downtown church, and hardly anybody shows up, and they learn about this, and they're going, oh man, what do we got now? And then they go out to give the Sunday sermon. This is like a few days after the craft showed up, and the whole church is packed from one side to the other. Even the people that wrote V understood it. Religion is not going anywhere, all right? It has been around for thousands of years for very good reasons, and it's going to be around for thousands of years more, I firmly believe. The Buddhists and the Hindus can handle anything. I think we've already covered that. The Jews, I don't think they have a problem. They're a very small religion. It's not a lot of people. The Muslim faith is going through some difficult times right now, but if you knew something about the Muslim faith and the jinns, you would know that they're not going to really find that particularly startling. They've been thinking along those lines, and it's part of their core religion. And then that brings us to the Catholic Church. How about the Catholic Church? Let me tell you, the Catholic Church is rocking, all right? They are the progressive church now. I bet you didn't know that. Probably not 2 words you expected to be heard together. Progressive Catholic Church, right? Didn't want that. 3 words. Here's the deal. Several hundred years ago, the Catholic Church kind of screwed up a little bit, and they decided that they would hold back the Copernican revolution. It was inconvenient, right? All these planets and stuff that they were finding, and so it was not a good thing, and so essentially they said, here's the deal. That's not allowable, and if you talk about that, we're going to burn you at the stake and excommunicate you. All right? Sorry, but that's just the way it is. And they did. They excommunicated a lot of people, burned at the stake a lot of people, and they were able to sort of slow down the Copernican revolution a little bit, but after about 100 years or so, it was pointless, and of course, we moved on. It was a very embarrassing kind of episode, frankly, and they do regret it. And I think in 2002 or 3, if I believe, the Catholic Church made a formal apology for doing that. They even released a couple of Galileo documents from the secret archives, which was very nice. But it's better than that. You see, the Catholic Church has known about the ETs for a long time. This is an interesting faith, all right? They go back, I don't know, I forget exactly, 1,000 years, something like that. But the point is that when they created their faith, they created this interesting concept called the confessional. It has wonderful qualities. If you go to a Catholic priest, you can confess your sins, you are given some task, and then you move on. This is great. I love it. Very popular. A lot of priests have talked to a lot of people in the confessional, and of course it's absolutely privileged communication, not to be said to anything. And so, over these years, you have people that are having beings turning up in their room, right? They're kind of gray, they got these big eyes, or maybe they look like something else. Obviously, this is very disturbing to, say, a nice Catholic in 1154. And so they think naturally they're being visited by the devil or demons or whatever, and so they go to their priest and they confess, "My Father, I have attracted the demons to my room, and they look like this, and what do I do?" We say 4 Hail Marys and put some sheep blood on the door, whatever the hell, I don't know. And they have been getting those reports a long time. Now, maybe initially they didn't quite figure it out, but after a while they're starting to go, something going on here. And of course, as we reach the modern times, they can look back in the archives and see, oh, that's what they were talking about. Catholic Church is way ahead on this. So, that brings us to 2 people. Now deceased, the late Monsignor Corabaducci, who after he retired as the head exorcist of the Catholic Church, that is a title I would just kill to have. Steve, what do you do? Currently I'm the head exorcist of the Catholic Church. Wow, that's even better than being an airline pilot. He started talking about this issue in Italy and elsewhere. He even came to the United States. I brought him over for one of my ex-conferences. And his message was the same thing over and again. The Catholic Church is fine with the idea of non-human extraterrestrial life. They're not demons. They would be children under a greater God. All right? And the debunkers just jumped off. He's an old fart. He doesn't know what he's doing. The Pope probably hates this, blah, 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 blah. They went on about it. He did this for about 7 years, and then he passed away. And the debunkers say, we got rid of that old fart and his crazy stuff about the Catholic Church, like extraterrestrials. The debunkers. Aren't they just a wonderful group? Don't you love them? Don't you love debunkers? If I had an anti-gravitic saucer, I'd gather them all up in a barge and I'd take them up into orbit and no, I wouldn't do that. Okay. And then a couple of years after Balducci died, this guy showed up. Maybe you recognize him. He is Father Jose Gabriel Funes, the head astronomer of the Catholic Church. And in several interviews over a period of 2 years, he repeated everything that Balducci said to the press, confirming that the Catholic Church is perfectly fine with extraterrestrials. They are not demons. They are children under a greater God. We're ready. Let's party. Not too long after his last statement, the Catholic Church, it was like December of 2010 or January, I can't remember, held an extraterrestrial life conference at the Vatican. Now, they didn't bring in people like me. They brought in some high-level, scientists. They came in and discussed the concept of extraterrestrial life and what it meant at the Vatican. Okay, so the Catholic Church is ready to pick up lots of new Catholics in the post-disclosure world. So all this baloney about religion, forget about it. And you want to know something else the Catholic Church is going to do? And it's genius. It's genius. They were famous for their cathedrals. They're not the only ones that did this, but they really did it up. Massive structures that just go straight up, and when you walk in, your eyes just go, boom, right there, right? Glory of God. Then they put saints and stuff on the ceiling, and God knows what's wonderful, right? This space, this sense of power. The post-disclosure Catholic Church is going to redesign their cathedrals, sort of. The new Catholic cathedral is, in fact, the universe. So when you look up, it's the whole enchilada. What you're seeing here is a deep field photograph from the Hubble telescope. Everything you see there is a galaxy. How many galaxies are there in the known universe? If you count the dwarfs, it's 7.85 trillion. So if God created the universe, wow, what a job. And now that is what you look up to. There is the whole universe there. That is, in fact, a portrayal of the entire known universe. It's 24 billion light years across, and every one of those little white things is a super cluster. It's called a galactic supercluster, a whole bunch of galaxies in there. And as I say, there's 7.85 trillion in there. And what's kind of cool about this is the reason you're seeing this universal ball is because we're at the center, you see, and this is how far we can look out. But guess what? What if the Earth was over here? Well, then we'd be looking out there. So it'd be a 24 billion, radius there. What if it was here? We don't know how big the universe is. And it could, theoretically, there's no physical law that prevents it, be infinite. Whoa! Now you're talking about some serious God stuff here. God created an infinite universe. This is the new cathedral for the Catholic Church. Others will be wise to follow. Now another one of the top 5 exopolitical questions. I could go on a lot about this, but just to give you a taste, I'm not going to elaborate on this, this is just a taste, all right? You want to talk about political implications, exopolitical implications. Are there formal agreements between human governments and extraterrestrials? Could we not agree that if we were to learn that, oh yeah, they've had some deals, struck some deals, exchanged some presents, going all the way back to the 40s, that's kind of like, interesting, and we'd kind of like to know more. Implications are vast. Don't know for sure. There's some evidence that seems to lean that way, a whole lot of speculation, a lot of people say they know, not really. My confidence level in that's running around 20%. But think of the implications. Okay. Now, we're still in the post-disclosure world. It's Haas 2.0. Disclosure happened about a month ago. I believe that the disclosure of the extraterrestrial presence will launch the greatest age of reform in human history. Now, what do I mean by that? You may be aware that there is the early beginnings of a progressive revolution going on. Finally, all right, kind of waited a while. Should have got to it a little bit sooner. A lot of it's coming out of the Northwest, San Francisco, Oregon, Seattle. Because, well, a whole lot of smart, progressive people moved here. Because they were smart and they knew a good thing when they saw it. Some of these people are going out from here and they're doing stuff. Some are just staying here and thinking a lot and their ideas are going out. But the progressive revolution is starting elsewhere. It is late in the game. I still have doubts about it. But it is the beginning of what ultimately becomes the great age of reform. But without disclosure, it's not going to do the job. Sorry, not going to happen. All right. Good point. They get points and they cause some good things to happen. But are they going to switch to Haas 2.0? No, not going to happen. Disclosure changes that. One of the first things that has to be reformed in the post-disclosure world is the secret empire. This is the vast intelligence complex that was created to defeat the Soviet Union and constrain and contain and deal with the ET presence. It is so large, it's hard to describe. Trillions of dollars have been spent on it. A great deal of it's underground. We have the biggest one. UK's got one, Canada's got a little one, Russia's got one, China's got one. But ours is the one I'm most concerned about. It's made up of millions of classified people, tens of millions of classified documents, thousands of covert programs, hundreds of special access unannounced programs, and on and on and on, huge underground facilities. It is an empire because it is separated away from essentially the elected government. It's not as another government. It's not telling us what to do. It's sort of got its own thing going. It's like the treehouse in the backyard, and the kids are saying, this is our house. You're not there. You're not invited, right? When I go so they have separated out. So does the president have access to this? No. Is the president told what's going on? No. Is the Senate and House Intelligence Committees able to oversee this? No. Most of those people on those committees couldn't even find their way out of their garage. They're jokes. And they're not getting any funnier. So the whole thing is operating separately. Whoa, that's kind of heavy. Now, fortunately for us, it's populated by military intelligence people that have the nation's interests at heart, and they're good people, and they're loyal. And so they do find themselves in this whole secret empire thing, but they're not going to try to create a kingdom and take over, but they're kind of stuck in there, and they don't know what to do in a way, but they just do what they do. But it is separated from elected government, and that, of course, is a major threat to our republic. And so that has got to be reformed. And I can assure you that is not going to happen pre-disclosure. No way. You can't get in the door. Post-disclosure, once the ET thing comes out, I think a whole lot of people are going to say, we need to come in, go down in the basement and kind of see what's going on down there, if you don't mind. So where's the key to the door? Over the last 60 years, the Pew Research Center has been studying trust in government in the United States. The results are startling. This chart goes back to 1955. If you go back into the 40s, the trust number on the far left gets up into the high 80s. That was post-World War II. You got a country where the trust in government level of the citizens is up in the high 80s, you have a very good country. You're going to do a lot of things. Things are going to go pretty well. Unfortunately, and here is your break right here, as far as I'm concerned, that is the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, passed in late '64. Once that resolution was passed, the die was cast, and from that point on, we plummeted down to 23%. You've lived through this, you know what I'm talking about. You got used to it. It was like a boiling frog. The point is that the difference between a 23% trust country and a 73% country is night and day. It's amazing we get anything done at all. We essentially have a hostile citizenry. It tried to make a comeback, clogged along there. I could go through the historical connections to all this. We don't have time. Took a little shot there. By the way, that is the 911 shot. Okay, notice it didn't last very long. That should not scare you. And then it hit there around what is it? That is 2005. Since then, it has come on down again, and it's sitting right around here at 19%. Unbelievable. So when you look at Washington, when you look at your country, when you see everything that's going wrong, understand there is an absolute direct correlation between that and that number there. And one of the reasons that number is there is that all of the secrecy and lies they had to conduct to win the Cold War, and we gave them that. And then there's all the secrecy about the ET issue, which every year millions of people know what's going on, and they're going, you're lying to us. I know that if I poll this audience right now, I'll do it. How many people in this audience believe the government is not telling you the truth about extraterrestrials? There you go. It's usually around 85%. You're smart. It's probably 98% here. And so that and a lot of other things have contributed to the collapse of citizen trust in their own government. It gets worse. Recently, the Congress, a year and a half ago, reached 11%. Nobody thought it could get lower. It's currently at 9%. Now, this has created a problem for the press because when they went to do the articles about this, including this one, they wanted to make some comparisons. And so they wanted to show things where there was more trust in by the people. But when they went to find something that the people had less trust in, they couldn't find anything. They really couldn't. They couldn't find anything of significance. That was it. That was the bottom. It was kind of awkward, So, well, no, they couldn't do it. There's another study and another graph. And then you got this one. I love this one. This is by institution. This is another study that was done. The military is at the top, and that's because we have the most loyal military in the world, and thank God for that, folks. All right? And what is the bottom of all of these major institutions? The United States Congress. That's all you need to know about why the United States is in serious decline. All right? Checking the time. We are at 9:22. We're doing pretty good. Yes? Oh, yeah, I will. The only way that you get somebody's trust back is tell them the truth. If you've got a kid and they've been lying to you for a couple of years and they're in big trouble and you don't trust them at all, and you know you've got to do something about it, so you talk with them and you say, look, you got to stop lying to me. And the kid says, can I just work on lying better so you think I'm telling the truth? That seems funny, but that's what Congress does. When they're confronted with this problem about the fact that they're lying so much, basically their response is, we'll try to lie better so you think we're telling the truth. The only way that child can return your trust is he has to tell you the truth, and he has to do it a number of times, or she has to do it a number of times. They can't come to you and say the truth on Monday and then start lying on Thursday. They have to start telling the truth, and only that way can you regain their trust. It is the only way. There are no other options. Nothing, not even drugs. Could you give them sodium pentothal? Not going to work. So if we're going to regain the trust of the American people, the government has got to start telling the truth about things. And the bigger the truth, the bigger the gain. And there's no bigger truth than the ET presence. And so disclosure may mark that turning point, and people are saying, okay, that's a good start. Now tell us about this, and tell us about that. And the government's going, wow, we told them the truth, and they're really high on that, and they just love us. Let's tell them some more truth. And before you know it, the truth train is just running all over Washington, D.C. There is a gathering movement against the secret empire and against the secrecy, which is now institutionalized around the world. I just picked 2 examples of this. Don't put huge evidence. On the left is Jesse Ventura. Now, the reason that he is in there is because Jesse is a mainstream guy. He was the governor of Minnesota, for crying out loud. And Jesse is really a guy that wants the truth. He wants the secrecy done, and he created a program called Conspiracy Theory. He pounded on some doors and raised some real hell. I love that show. And he was shut down. Okay, I know the producer and all about it. He was shut down. They basically said, One way they shut him down is the Congress, the MOD, and a couple other agencies said, we'll never talk to you. You never come here. We're never going to talk to you again about anything. So your doors are closed. So go find your story somewhere else. One of the members of Congress that he caught in a total, blatant, ridiculous lie basically called up the owner of the whole shebang, I think it was Time Warner, and said, you have to pull that show off the website. And they did. Time Warner, bless their pointy little heads, took the show off because the congressman was embarrassed because he didn't even know his own bill that he passed regarding FEMA camps. Jesse is so mad that he called us a fascist state and moved to Mexico, where he is right now. But a meeting is going to be set up between him and me soon, I believe. The other gentleman, looking much more geeky than he now looks, is, of course, Julian Assange. This is Conspiracy Theory. You can buy it and see it on the YouTube. It's a lot better than one might think. And man, if they could have done a second year. They're working on a somewhat different version. They were told if you can make something more funky and entertaining and paranormal-ish and whatever, maybe you can do another series. And the producer bit his tongue and said, you know, Steve, it's business. You know, we're going to maybe do something. I understand. And then there's this, WikiLeaks. Game changer. Huge. I can tell you with confidence that nothing in our lifetime, and maybe ever, has ever scared the power elite in this world more than this. Absolutely petrified them, tied them up in knots. They didn't know what to do. They were scared. They were scared. So it's like the same thing, you know, when I came, I didn't want to drive over the speed limit, and I don't want to say nasty words because it's such a nice place. I want to, you know, be cool. They were so scared that members of Congress were calling for his execution on the congressional floor. Right? Yeah, that's a little unusual. The man should be killed, right? And so they've currently got him tied up on a Swedish sex scandal. How in the hell you can get into a Swedish sex scandal, I can't imagine. And so he's in house arrest in the UK. Several other sites have developed similar lines. Things are sort of contained right now, but WikiLeaks is a huge problem for them. And because of WikiLeaks, you are starting to see some counter-actions against the web. Now, the web is defending itself pretty well, but it's not over. Watch anything the government does to contain the web at this point and hook it right back to him. It's not about the entertainment industry. It's not about any of that other stuff. It's about how can we stop more of him. And if they get control of the internet, that's not good. However, I believe they can't do it. I believe if they tried to take control of the internet, there would be armed revolution. What did Jefferson say? Every once in a while you have to water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants. Now, I'm not proposing we do that.
And then there is the emergence of Anonymous. Oh boy. This is kind of like Julian Assange metastasized. What you have here is a hacker corps that is kind of getting their act together and deciding there's something more important to do than create computer viruses to drive your PC crazy. I won't belabor this, but I do want to comment on this.
We're cool. We're going to have reasonable questions. Anonymous has taken up this symbol, all right? And I love this symbol. This, of course, is the mask from V for Vendetta. It is a Guy Fawkes rendition, all right? And it is really cool on several levels. I'm going to find out who did this. Whoever designed this mask, genius, okay? Why? First of all, it's smiling. It's not a smirking smile, it's a confident smile, okay? We will prevail, all right? It's intelligent. I think that comes from the eyebrows, but clearly it's intelligent. Now, maybe this is polluted because I saw the movie and the character and all of this, but I'm trying not to be affected by that. There's intelligence there, all right? So that's important. And so as a symbol for an intelligent reaction and engagement of the world of secrecy that is turning our lives into vivisecting our lives while the government gets more and more secret. In other words, upside down. We're supposed to have open government, private lives. Instead, we have open lives, private government, completely upside down. And it's not changing. They're going after that, fine. But there's something else about this mask, and it's in the context of the movie, that I really love. And I'll bet most of you did not pick up on this. Remember in the movie, they all come marching down to watch the Tower of London blow up and the Parliament building, wearing the masks, all right? And there's this like sea of these people with the same mask on. Now, if they'd been coming down and marching there without the mask, it would be a sea of people, everyone different and so forth, kind of coming toward to do something. You'd look at that, you'd have a certain reaction. But with the masks on, it was roughly the equivalent of the light from a light bulb as opposed to a laser. And so by always having the same mask, they have created a laser action. They're all coming together. In other words, the mask becomes the symbol for citizen collective action, which is way underutilized in the United States and has to be built up many magnitudes where it is. The American people stopped collectively acting. Now I'm just talking about million-person march. I'm saying collectively coming together to say, this is, we're going to solve this, we're going to solve that, we're going to throw that person out of office, etc. We're scattered, we're separated, we're kept here and there and everywhere else, and so we never really can get together. But the mask, put that on, there they come. It's a symbol of collective action. And then, what happens at the end of the movie? They all take it off. All right, so what they're saying here is this. When you need collective action, you put the mask on and you act collectively. When the problem is solved, you can take it off and go about your lives, right? Doing your thing. And then you put it back on. That's great stuff. Now we come to really interesting stuff. Disclosure very likely could be prelude to open contact. But in any event, eventually open contact is going to happen. We have contact now, it's not open. It's kind of a private thing that goes on, all right? It's not for public consumption. Anybody that's living in the pre-disclosure world needs to start thinking about this. Disclosure may lead to that very quickly, and that's, of course, a whole nother thing, isn't it? And in any event, post-disclosure, we absolutely have to think about it, and of course that's going to be something that needs to be dealt with. Here's a major exopolitical question, one of the most important. Are the short-term and or long-term intentions of any extraterrestrial beings benign, threatening, or both? This is a huge question, obviously. Don't all of you want to know that? Fair enough. All I will say, well, first of all, we know what threatening looks like. Hollywood has been very, very helpful there. Looks like that. Looks like that. That's coming out soon. It's called Battleship. Looks like that, War of the Worlds. Not a bad movie, I thought. Tom Cruise is all right. And that's Battle LA. just before it slid into the ocean. That's what threatening looks like. All right, fine, I understand that. Hollywood does its thing. After 16 years in this, having talking to researchers, having talked to scores of contactees, knowing that in the last 20-some years, over 1 million contactees have sent written accounts of their experiences to researchers. Did you know that? That's a lot of hoaxes. 1 million. Whitley Strieber and Ann have gotten over 500,000 just with them. And Ann Strieber has read every single one of them. I believe it is benign. I believe that we do not have to fear from these entities. I believe there are some agendas that are a little bit difficult. I also believe that any serious threat to us would be mitigated by alliances, just like we have here. They have alliances to contain the nutcases, right? If there are any out there, just like we do that here. Ultimately, it's all good. Could be wrong. That's my position. If I thought differently, I'd tell you. I wouldn't hesitate, even though I know it would not make you very mellow. That brings us to another pretty cool question once you start thinking about contact. This is a big one. We could spend hours on this, but let me just toss it out. It's a pretty cool question. Probably most of you haven't thought about it lately. Where are the hybrids and why were they created? Here's something to mention. I got ahead of myself, but Whitley Strieber kind of triggered the contact phenomena in terms of a major way when he wrote this book, Communion. The book was published worldwide. It was in bookstores everywhere. People started seeing the book cover, and it started triggering flash memories in huge numbers of people. And that helped to guarantee that the contact thing was going to come out, there was going to be studies and so forth. And of course, is why he's gotten over 500,000 letters since the publishing of this book. It's an historical thing. He's not totally in agreement with that particular face. It's not quite there, but it was close enough. We know from the contactee evidence that they are able to take a woman's egg or zygote, mix it with alien DNA, and bring a alien-human hybrid to term or to childhood completely outside the mother in containers on ships. Contactees will go into a ship and they'll find hundreds of these containers on a wall or hundreds of drawers. Open the drawer and there is a gestating alien-human hybrid. Then they can take the egg or zygote of an alien-human hybrid woman and combine it with some more human DNA and create a second level hybrid and then a third level hybrid, and by the time they get to the third level, it's looking a lot like us. They may have done this millions of times. I know one contactee, she's had five hybrid children. And some of them she's been taken to see later on and visited. Millions. All right. Where are they? This book that's over there is by Kim Carlsberg. She is a contactee, Hybrid Children, the works. It is a unique book. I helped get it published. And it's extraordinary. It's the only one of its kind. There were 4,800 books done in the first edition. There may not be a second edition in print, but you'll go to iPad books. It's 150 contact stories with synopses and then each contact story has a piece of art associated with it. And that art is often done by the contactee themselves, and so it's like a panoply of the whole picture. So it's the most representational book on this ever done. And if you want one, I have some. That's an example of how it's set up. Synopsis on the left, a piece of art with respect to that person's experience on the right. That is what is called a reptoid. How would you like to have one of those visiting you? Apparently they're okay. So, hybrids. We'll get back to that real quickly. I'm moving along. We're going to get a few questions. I'm going to have to move faster. Here's the good part. You ready for the great part? It's going to take you home, make you feel good? Here is what I think is going to happen. We're going to have disclosure. Disclosure leads to open contact. Open contact means access. All right? And why is that important? When you study the contactee reports on a broad scale, what you quickly figure out is that the stock and trade of extraterrestrials is genetic life sciences, and all sciences. They are masters of it. We just mapped the human genome, and we are really proud of ourselves. Now, 150 years ago, we were in horses and buggies. So that's cool. Now imagine what we would be 500 years from now, 1,000 years from now, in terms of our ability to deal with genes and DNA. Oh man, hey, they're that far and more. This is what challenges them. I mean, their third graders probably know how solar systems work and the sun works and quantum physics. That's easy. Life is more difficult, and every biosphere is unique. In other words, you got a whole nother unique biosphere, a whole bunch of new life, and you're cruising the galaxy. Man, that's heavy stuff. This is their stock in trade. They can make human hybrids, alien human hybrids. They can make anything they want. And we kind of try to do that too. They're way far ahead of us. What does that mean? Well, first of all, it means this. I have no doubt whatsoever that the extraterrestrials can cure any disease that we have without breaking a sweat, including reversal of paralysis, regeneration of nerve tissues, Parkinson's disease, MS, anything. If we had access to that technology, we could do that. We could have access to it in a couple of years. I think contact will happen 2 years after disclosure. That's kind of a nice thing to look forward to. But it gets even cooler than that. I believe that star-faring beings, going back as far as you want to go, have been traveling the galaxy and moving DNA around between biospheres for a very long time. Which is why you got this dude. How could an ET kind of look reptilian? Just sort of accidentally, just happened to have a separate development on a planet a million light years away and just kind of had that reptilian thing going for him? I don't think so. Odds of that are pretty low. Unless did some DNA from 60 million years ago kind of get passed around a little bit, ended up, and did a little work, and before you know it, you got a nice sentient being that happens to have some reptilian in him, present from Earth, right? In fact, we may have a DNA connection throughout the entire galaxy already. And we may have DNA from them. And of course, I said, I think the evidence is pointing to that. They have manipulated us. Where did they get the manipulated DNA? We think, well, it comes from them. They gave us some of our DNA. Hell, they may have given us DNA from a completely different civilization, who knows where. But it was just the DNA to use. In other words, we're already Galaxians in a way. We're already connected. This is big stuff. That's big news. The government thinks you can't handle that news. The government thinks you can't handle the truth. And the evidence is quite clear. It's the government that can't handle the truth. Healing, talked about that, right? The mind. They're fully telepathic. They have extraordinary skills with the mind. Guess what? We do too. You know, right? When you judge, when you go to assess how a basketball team is going to do in the Final Four, you don't look at the 3 worst players on the team and say they got no chance. You look at the best players on the team and say, hey, they're going to win. If you're assessing a civilization, you don't look at the worst humans, you look at the best humans. And when you look at the best humans, we got some pretty sharp humans here. We got kids that can create symphonies at 5. We've got savants that can do unbelievable math in their head without even trying. We've got people that created vast theories of physics on nothing but thought experiments, and on and on and on. You know what I'm talking about. They're all over the place. Well, if you have a human genius, all you know is that human has a brain, human brain, that can be a genius. Fine. So tweak some other people, make more geniuses. We are actually not potted plants at all. We're pretty ingenious, pretty clever. We have significant powers. They got more powers. And I have no doubt that they can enhance our powers. Would the world be better off with more smart people? I kind of think so. Is that doable in a post-disclosure world, post-contact world? I think so, including telepathy, which I think will develop. Now, there are a lot of married couples out there that will say, not ready for that. But nevertheless, and so here we are. I'm finished. We're going to have about 15 minutes of questions. Here we are. It's 2012. Disclosure could be at hand. We could be ready to start stepping up, finally, and leave 1.0, operating system 1.0 behind, and install 2.0. We're not going to have a lot of time. We don't have 100 years. We've got to get it installed very quickly, and we've got to get most of the 1.0 out of the operating system. And if we do that, we may, very in short, have access to the galaxy ourselves. That's what's potentially in store for us. It's not a sure thing. But one thing is certain. The outcome is not just dependent upon the ETs, I can assure you. And we certainly can't depend on the government. However, if we all put on our Guy Fawkes masks and basically go together and say, okay, we want the truth. We want access to the technology. We want to know as much as we can, as soon as we can, about our entire history and the extraterrestrial reality, and we're not going to stop until we get it. And I think we will prevail, And one of the reasons we prevail is the great journalistic system, that vast fourth estate, will be unleashed once the disclosure event has taken place. They will suddenly realize some big news is happening, and they will jump on our side, and it will be us and the media against whatever government intransigence they are. And thus we enter Human Operating System 2.0.
RVML Resource Center is a volunteer-operated federal 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization. RVML is dedicated to providing easy access to a comprehensive collection of information on a variety of metaphysical, spiritual, and personal development subjects. RVML accepts and appreciates all donations. Material and monetary contributions are fully tax-deductible. This recording is not copyrighted, and permission is granted to broadcast, exhibit, or duplicate all or part of this program for non-commercial educational purposes. This live presentation was organized and presented by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. For more information, please visit rvml.org.